Good morning, people. Just getting started. It's a slow morning today. Oh, how is everybody doing? Huh? I left some of these streams in the recording and then I haven't fixed it since, so bear with me. Come on. What are you doing? There we go. Get some Ion news because these people.
What is the current status of negotiations and the ceasefire amid the blockade in the Persian Gulf?
Non-existent.
Well, the reports indicate that both Iran and United States are in contact with each other through the meditators, and they're trying to have
Okay, I guess their internet isn't doing so sporty. We'll come back to those guys.
It's for the labor market, and I think that's going to be for years to come.
And you think we'll see that this year, AI impact basically layoffs?
I think some of that impact in the back half of the year, but we're also going to be lapping tariffs, which I think is going to be very important for goods prices. I think the owner's equivalent
or
targets. And along with our Gulf partners, we've thus far intercepted 1,700 ballistic missiles and one-way attack drones, defending our forces and our partners in the civilian population. And we remain ready to do so should the need arise. Along the way, we consume more than 6 million meals, and by my estimate, more than 950...
I'm pretty sure that's from yesterday.
Sweet is, but when it relates to oil, it's a good thing. But they're coming to our country. Right now, there are many boats coming to our country.
There sure are.
According to experts, Tony, America has some of the best oil, as the president just mentioned, sweet and light. And there are some reports that approximately 120 oil vessels, as the president mentioned, is on the way to the U.S. to stock up, to disperse the light sweet oil all around the world. What say you?
Sweet oil.
So, yeah, John.
It's so sweet.
People in Texas, North Dakota, all of our production oil, our wells are doing super well. Venezuela is sending all sorts of oil. If you go look at marine,
our wells are doing well. Who would have known?
See all the ships coming out of Venezuela. It's not a supply issue. It's the issue is it's a commodity.
It's an issue with your mom.
We'd have cheap oil and plentiful oil, and we are going to be the ones who actually have to provide a lot of these resources, especially refined oil, to other places, to include the People's Republic of California, since they have no refining capability. I'm just saying. And I'm not really joking about that.
Yeah.
So, but we're going to have to provide this. And plus the EU. John, think about this. The EU has zero ability to take care of itself. So all the resources they need are going to have to come from somewhere else. So they're cut off from Russia, cut off from the Middle East. They've only got us to come to, and they're not going to like it.
They are in a bad position.
At this point, we are doing very well. What President Trump needs to do is find a way to get the prices down. Supply is not an issue. If you remember, you and I are old enough to remember the fuel crisis from the 70s when everybody was lining up at the gas stations. None of that's going to happen. We have plenty of supply. The question becomes, how do we drop the prices down to get the economy
that is the question.
Affecting the economy, and that's what needs to be the focus for us.
Well, look, the price of oil, it hasn't
markets,
jumped.
yes, pulling.
I mean, you can see the price of oil hasn't really jumped too bad. We're still below $100 a barrel. So, I mean, These are
which
futures
Iran
markets. Which
shares with Qatar. This was a warning to the Islamic Republic of Iran, I believe, on behalf of especially the United States.
Honestly expecting this to be
and
higher
perhaps some of the Persian Gulf countries
95, 98,
that
that's not too shabby.
They are willing to escalate the situation if Iran continues attacking the energy infrastructure of these countries. I have to remind you viewers that none of these countries took part in any attacks against Iran's energy infrastructure. It was the Iranians who did that. So I think this was a message, but it seems that the Iranians are willing to take further risks by escalating the situation. They believe that the Persian Gulf countries and the United States have more to lose. The Iranian side believes that by attacking these oil fields and by raising the costs on the Persian Gulf states, especially on their energy sector, they will bring the costs of the war to an unbearable level for these oil and gas producing countries, and most importantly for the United States of America. So this seems to be part of the strategy. Of course, the other parts of this strategy are using missiles and drones to attack Israel and the Persian Gulf states, and most importantly for them, closing of the Strait of Hormuz.
All right, we're going to put those off to the side. Those are the propaganda networks. I like to keep an eye on them and make sure we know what they're saying. But today, apparently, there are supposed to be some talks between Israel and Lebanon. Which, Israel's issue isn't with Lebanon per se. It's with Hezbollah. That's what most people on social media don't seem to get. I stand with Iran. Yeah, you're a fucking retard.
For Israel. How could these continuing operations in Lebanon be addressed at the talks today between Israeli officials and also the Lebanese government?
Well, it seems that the Lebanese government wants them to completely cease, and that seems to be a non-starter for the Israelis. If I'm not mistaken, there was a report that the Lebanese ambassador had asked her Israeli counterpart during the preliminary talks for a cessation of hostilities, or that she would ask for a cessation of hostilities, rather, as kind of a goodwill gesture. Whether that happened or not is unclear, but that seems to have been the stance of the Lebanese government throughout, that they want these Israeli operations to stop. They want Israel to begin a withdrawal from South Lebanon. And the Israelis, conversely, they're on the cusp of taking over Bint Jbeil as of yesterday. I'm not sure if there's been an update overnight, but Bint Jbeil is a critical center for Hezbollah. It's a village of 30,000 people in South Lebanon. It's not a small area. It holds symbolic significance for Hezbollah. This is the place where Hassan Nasrallah, the former Secretary General, declared after the May 2000 withdrawal that Israel is weaker than a spider's web. So the Israelis taking it over and taking over the stadium where he made that declaration is meant
weaker
to
than a spider's web,
create a sense of defeat among Hezbollah. But the place from which that statement issued is now in Israeli hands. So these operations are ongoing. The Israelis said last week that they'd reached the anti-tank line. This is the line that would put Hezbollah's anti-tank arsenal out of range of northern Israel. And what we've heard, there have been conflicting statements, but the IDF last week, not the week prior, there were reports in Haaretz and elsewhere that the IDF intended to establish a 2 to 3 kilometer buffer zone in South Lebanon. Prime Minister Netanyahu, I think, said a couple of days ago that it would be closer to something like 8 kilometers. So what that looks like is ultimately going to, we'll see what it's going to look like. But this appears to be a continued Israeli goal, and it remains unclear what Lebanon can offer at the moment in order to deter the Israelis from that goal, to convince the Israelis to let go of that goal. Because the way the Israelis are looking at it now, the revival of this security zone in South Lebanon, and one did exist between 1985 and 2000, is the only way to keep Hezbollah away from the border and to kind of establish a striking pad, if you will, within Lebanon for ground troops, not just the Air Force, to continue striking at Hezbollah within the country and continue degrading it. So it's unclear to me what the Lebanese are going to try to offer that's going to convince the Israelis that this security zone is unnecessary.
There's a lot of unknowns as we look ahead to these talks coming up later today. David, my final question for you would be, I guess, taking a look at the past, something that struck out to me as I'm reading this reporting and preparing for these talks is that this is the first time that we have seen Israel and Lebanon sit down for talks in decades, at least according to the reports that I have read. Can you take us back to the last time we saw officials from both of these countries sitting down for talks? What was that time like? What brought them to the table to have those discussions? And what were some of the lessons
80s,
that we can
wasn't it?
take from those previous talks into today?
Well, the last time was ahead of the 1983, the May 17th, 1983 so-called peace agreement, where Israeli and Lebanese officials negotiated a peace deal, peace treaty for all intents and purposes that lasted a short time before it was rescinded. And the reason why it was rescinded is because Syria put pressure on Lebanon. Syria, which had historically dominated Lebanon, put pressure.
Right. Well, if I needed a history lesson, that's not what we're interested in today. How's everybody doing this morning? Drop a ticker symbol in the chat if you'd like me to pull something up in particular. But we are pretty much just going through the news, checking out who's killing who today, who's lying, which come to find out, that's everybody. And we are checking out the prices of oil, Bitcoin, silver, gold, a few stocks here and there, stock market overall. But like I said, if there's anything in particular you'd like me to take a look at, I'll be more than happy to. Just drop it in the chat. I am going to go over to these guys.
Welcome back. A new push for talks. Pakistan is proposing another round between the U.S. and Iran after signs of progress from both sides.
But any broader deal, it faces hurdles, and Hezbollah says it won't abide by terms linked to Israel-Lebanon talks as Israel pushes for the group's disarmament.
Let's head to correspondent Philip Crowther, live in Islamabad. Philip, so
sounded like he didn't know how to pronounce that for a second.
These talks can actually move forward this time around.
Well, look, let's start with my presence here. We've decided to stick it out here in Islamabad because we are hearing quite a lot of rumors here that there could be a second round of talks that could be organized maybe here in Islamabad, the Pakistani capital, maybe in Turkey as well. We don't know yet, but it might come as a surprise that despite the fact that both parties, of course, walked away after those 21 hours of discussions at the weekend, that they are willing to come back to the table. Not the exact same people, I should mention. Not Vice President J.D. Vance. Don't expect him to turn up later this week. Don't expect the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament either, or the Foreign Minister who represented Tehran here. This is more likely going to be a round of technical talks. That means they're going to get into the details of what they might be able to agree on and what not, and what exactly led to these talks in the end falling apart here. So we'll see. The Pakistani government certainly is pushing to have a second round of talks here in Islamabad, maybe before the end of the week. Of course, the backdrop, as you've already mentioned, are rising tensions again between the United States and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy blockade has, at least in theory, now begun, but we don't know how it's exactly going to be implemented, how exactly it might be enforced, and indeed how Iran and any ships that are trying to bring, for example, Iranian oil out of the Persian Gulf into the Gulf of Oman and into the wider world and onto the international market, how they might react to this U.S. blockade. There are certainly fears that there could be a further escalation of tensions, not just of tensions, but also a further military escalation. We are right now in a very short 2-week ceasefire between the United States and Israel on one side and Iran on the other. That can break apart very, very quickly indeed.
Philip, appreciate that report, and thank you for laying that out for our viewers as to where we stand right now. Just to reiterate, though, what are some of the main sticking points right now between the U.S. and Iran?
Nukes. Don't we already know this?
Well, we heard what the administration at least sees it as its main sticking point. It was Vice President J.D. Vance who spoke about it. He said that Iran essentially is not promising to not pursue a nuclear weapon. That's been a demand from the United States for decades now. But we have now slowly but surely found out from both the Iranian side but also from U.S. officials that there were quite a lot of agreements, not something that might lead to a wider peace agreement, not yet. But the sides did get a little bit closer, and you might remember President Trump also talking about this and saying that, well, essentially that the two sides were getting friendly with each other, that they did agree on some things, just not the main bone of contention, and that is, of course, Iran's nuclear program.
Duh.
Thanks so much, Philip Crowther, for your report.
Mm-hmm. They don't want to give up their nukes. They're not going to give up their nukes. They're not. I just had something that I found. This is why I pulled up Facebook over here, for Christ's sake. Where is it? I had a video. There you go, flat earthers, the extinction of dinosaurs. There was a killer video. Oh shit, I know where it is. It's actually in my YouTube channel that I just either just shared or it is coming soon. I'll pull it up in my history. Man, I'm telling you, the Iran is winning the meme war. And you can't even hear it. What the hell's going on? Sorry. These stupid settings in this stupid. There we go. That might have fixed it. Let's see.
The U.S. is sending a large military joint U.S. warplane to Israel. It seems something big is about to happen. After the cancellation of the deal, Iran is only able to compete with the U.S. because it has a large stockpile of missiles. The U.S. wants to prevent Iran from even developing missiles so that it can destroy them at will, just like Venezuela. But Iran refuses to allow this. That's why negotiations are failing repeatedly. And now, from Iran's statements, it seems that it is in the mood to build a lot. That's why it is not giving up nuclear enrichment. The hint is enough. But when countries like Israel and the U.S. are constantly trying to destroy it, the only deterrent it needs to protect Iran from destruction is its nuclear power. Why is it that no one touches North Korea? Why is it that despite so much tension between India and Pakistan, a full-scale war never breaks?
I mean, in a perfect world, Iran wouldn't exist. But, you know, that's why they want them, apparently. According to some people. But at the same time, it'd be one thing if it was just for defensive purposes, right? But we all know that they want to destroy Israel and they want to destroy America. And whether or not they would actually do that, that's for smarter minds to determine. I think preventative measures is just being safe. You know, the fact that Iran is operating 100% on prophecy, which is why this is the reason they're trying to destroy Israel to begin with. You know, I'm of the thinking that, yeah, we should probably do our best to disarm them. And if they don't want to
Hanukkah festival in Prague. So, and I said that we saw the discussion coming about moving the Czech embassy, and then nothing.
Right. I don't really care about the Czech Republic. I don't know about you. If you do, let me know. I'll be happy to go back, but I don't think you do either. I'm going to, unfortunately, I'm going to leave that on for just a second because I got something else I want to
make it, and I would like to open it by in person as a Minister of Foreign Affairs. So I wanted to reopen this discussion, and of course there are two levels of thinking about this. One is the symbolic level, important for Israel, but there's also a practical level that, you know, the office of the government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is situated and located in Jerusalem, Knesset, Jerusalem, the office of the president.
Okay, I want to point out, there's this network that I've pulled up on here before, and it is pretty much, it's some Asian propaganda network, and all they do is yell and scream, and it's very unorganized, but they go by the call symbol of CNN, right? They also have a QR code on the screen, and they're like, scan the QR code. Don't scan that QR code. You can scan mine, though. That over here on the far left. Feel free to scan mine. But yeah, I want to point out they're not necessarily CNN. Now, they do mix in some of our CNN with theirs. It's a very strange little network. But it's mostly propaganda. Some of it's pretty funny. That's why I pull it up. But there's nuggets of truth in it as well. It's not always up either. A lot of times it'll sit here and spin like you're seeing this right here. I'm hoping it'll come up, but they don't always have a great connection. But it's obscure little places like this that I like to pull up just to have a what do you call it? Why is... What the hell is going on here? Okay. Yeah, I don't... Yeah, if you're on Rumble, weird stuff is happening right about now. Let me know how how everything's coming through on your end. If you're with YouTube or if you're on Rumble, comment and let me know what the picture looks like. Because it looks like Rumble's being choppy. YouTube looks fine, though. All right. Looks like they may have finally come up. Let's listen in.
The US and Iran held their highest level face-to-face meetings ever in the last, almost 5 decades now. And so that's a really important thing to underscore, that they have both come to the realization that they need to have direct negotiations at high levels if they are going to make a political breakthrough. And I think it also suggests that there is an appetite in both capitals for some sort of a grand bargain. But the only way they're going to get there is if they both show flexibility and compromise, rather than redoubling down on this idea of maximum pressure and maximum resistance, because it has been a failed policy now for 47 years.
All right, Eli Gerenmeier, great to have you with us. Thank you.
I've got
and
Fox
time
and
may be
friends.
running out. You see the current ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. It is set to expire in just over a week.
2 p.m.
Okay.
Live
Iran's
audience.
president warning that threatening the Strait of Hormuz will have widespread consequences for the world.
Yeah, I mean, this
Says
is...
that Tehran will resume negotiations only
This is international
under
waters.
international law. Israeli and Lebanese officials, they are expected to meet for direct talks in Washington. And
You see how they're throwing regular CNN in there, and it was just News 5. This is a strange little YouTube channel, but if you want to look at it yourself, it's under CNN 18. They usually have several live streams going at a time. Personally, I don't care about actual CNN, so they can go themselves. I was going to pull up Fox and Friends because that was on, but they are no longer, they're currently on commercial, so.
And after the company pulled in $130 billion in client inflows, with ETFs accounting for almost all of that. And we end on the airlines. One of the biggest airline deals ever could be on the table. We're reporting that United CEO's Scott Kirby has floated a potential merger with American Airlines, that he's talked to senior government officials about that. So now we are seeing American adding to its earlier gains, up 7.4%. John?
Yahara, thank you. I find this a major flex.
It's just a flex. Got a really tough moment for the airlines, given a fuel cost situation, and you've got one name coming out and saying, yeah, we're ready to buy. We're ready to go.
It's a specific flex, too, because remember that the CEO of United used to work as the president of American Airlines. So it's a really interesting moment and an increasing rivalry between the big three.
Conflict of
More
interest.
to come on that story. On our radar this morning, the US and Iran weighing further negotiations as President Donald Trump presses ahead with a naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. The two countries aiming to extend the two-week ceasefire before it expires on April 22. Elsewhere, that story. United, the CEO, Scott Kirby, floating a massive merger with rival Americans. Sources telling us here at Bloomberg, Kirby pitched the idea to senior government officials. A deal would require approval from both the DOT and the DOJ. And finally, let's finish on the bank. Shares of JP Morgan and Wells Fargo trading lower in the pre-market. JP Morgan Bank cutting its net interest income forecast for the full year. Wells Fargo posting net interest for the first quarter that missed analyst estimates.
Just to put it into perspective, I feel like a broken record, but $103 billion was the downgrade from 104.5. That was the upgrade from January to February, and then February back to where we are in April, and suddenly we're back to where we were when we began the year. These are wonderful earnings. The question is just how much expectations had gotten elevated heading into this. The fact that you're having a record investment banking, a record markets activity with respect to JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs highlights just how much energy there still is in the capital markets. And that, I think, is going to be the takeaway, even if there is a one-day snap in terms of the performance.
And it comes at a time when I know Jamie Dimon also likes to moonlight as a geopolitical risk analyst. He's talking about all of the risk. And at this moment, they feel like the wall of worry, those bricks continuously stack up.
American Airlines.
Stock is down by just 0.8%. Let's talk about the shakeout in the commodity market, and not in crude. Gold snapping a two-day losing streak with inflation concerns easing on renewed optimism for a peace deal with Iran.
Two-day losing
Morgan
streak,
Stanley writing the longer-term effects of current events in the Middle East are more bullish than bearish for metals if they bring more stockpiling.
There's American Airlines.
Amy, good morning.
Morning.
And welcome to New York as well. Let's talk about the degree of disruption you've seen in your space over the last 6 weeks. How have things changed?
Yeah, so look, the big change we've seen is really the aluminium market. This has been the most physically disrupted from the conflict so far. First of all, it was a question of we couldn't ship anything out. The region is about 9% of global aluminium production. Then we started worrying about getting those raw materials in, so the alumina and bauxite. And then we actually had some strikes on facilities and on energy infrastructure. And so we've lost about 4% of global aluminium production. And bear in mind, in commodities, we care about those very small imbalances. It's the price is set at the margin. So aluminium has been one of the standout performers so far. And what you typically see is when these disruptions happen, you're looking at 12 months to fix them. So that's been the big disrupted one. And then, of course, we've had some changes in these macro factors that have been a big driver for metals. So things like the dollar weakness had been a big tailwind. That reversed briefly, obviously coming back towards weakness again, changes in interest rate expectations. So that has taken a bit of the wind out of the sails for some of the others.
Let's just stick on that line, 12 months to fix. 12 months to fix the production, to get back to where we were pre-war. What does it mean for the demand story over the next year? How do you anticipate that's going to change?
Yeah, look, we anticipate there'll be about a 2 million tonne surplus in the aluminium market, which is a lot of demand to try and destroy. I think what we're seeing at the moment, similar to oil, we've got a very steep backwardation, so a downward slope in the aluminium curve. What that's trying to do is disincentivize holding excess inventory at end users at the moment. So we're sort of trying to incentivize everyone to hold as little as possible for now while we try and figure out where we can get a bit more supply. We might also start to see a bit of switching. So could you see perhaps some substitution towards things like steel in the auto sector? But I think it's going to stay a very, very tight market.
How much have you seen different regions pull up the slack, given the fact that in the Middle East there has been a destruction to facilities and a destruction to supplies? Are you seeing, for example, South America start to ramp up production? Australia, how much do you see sort of a shifting to different parts of the world?
Yeah, look, the challenge with aluminium is it's really all about electricity supply. And if we think about everything that's going on in the world with data centers and AI, the one thing that we're struggling with is electricity supply. The two regions where really you would think you could have a bit of response is China and Indonesia. Now, China is actually capped on its capacity. Potentially there's a room to increase slightly your amperage and get a little bit more out of it, but there's not that much that China can do. And then Indonesia has a good pipeline, but we kind of knew that that was coming already. They can't really really do much quickly. And again, takes 12 months to fix a smelter, also takes time to ramp one up. And power costs are just becoming very, very difficult. I mean, even in the US, we've had smelters being sold to data centers, even where in the US, you've not just got aluminium prices, but you've got this record Midwest premium. So the all-in price here is about $6,000, and that's still not been enough.
So this sounds really problematic. This sounds like it should
Your
be moving
mom is
markets more.
problematic.
It seems like a shortage. It seems like something that's going to cause inflation. Are you as sanguine as the rest of markets that seem to be just sort of declaring that
I got a question for you guys.
I think, look, there's clearly an element of positioning and flows here. Aluminium was already a very, very long market coming into this, so I would say it's not like the market was caught short and had to suddenly cover, and I think that explains partly it. Some of this is playing out.
I've got a question for you guys. Right. I want everybody's opinion. Now, you're not allowed to not say something about this, but I want everybody's opinion on this guy. All right? Pay attention. This guy, Right Chong. Not that other guy.
Until we turn. Hold on. Can't wait till we turn that sack of shit on the left into a pink face. His smug ass can't wait.
Him. The guy on the left. You've seen him. You've seen him on Facebook with his Praise Be to Allah videos and grossly mischaracterizing Iran's position. This is the guy that so many clueless Americans idolize and actually think is a good person somehow. Now, I don't know if he's a good person in his heart, but do I care? No, not really. Like I said in that video, I can't wait until we turn him into a pretty pink paste and smear him across the desert. Now, I would love somebody else's opinion on this. So far, nobody said a word. I don't have very many people watching, of course. But, yeah, I would love anybody's opinion on him. I'd love to talk about this smug piece of human garbage. I don't care if your opinion differs from mine. I'll respect anybody's opinion. If you love the man, if you want to orally gratify him, you feel free to say so. We can talk about it respectfully, like gentlemen. But yeah, we'll go back to the charts. His name is Ibrahim, like Abraham, but with an E, spelled a little different. I could give you his last name. I had it. I changed the name of the video, so I don't.
Never think you're better than anyone else. Never think you're better than anyone else. We have different goals.
That's so true, baby. But for the sake of this, right? Yeah. Yeah. His name is Ibrahim, whatever his name is. I forget his last name. I was going to dig it up, but I just don't care. But, like I said, I would love somebody else's opinion. I would love to know why you want to orally gratify him. Feel free to explain it to me. Because, I don't have a clue. Alright, let's see what Asian News is saying over here. They're talking about the ceasefire.
With the French President Emmanuel Macron. Well, Pezeshkian says Iran remains open to negotiations, but only within the framework of international law. He stressed that actions based on pressure or military threats would not lead to a lasting agreement.
Looks like somebody didn't like my comment about orally gratifying an Iranian, so they decided to leave.
Support a diplomatic solution.
I'm sure they stink. Is that okay to say?
US President Donald Trump has criticized the United States media and New York Times for coverage of the war and accusing them.
It's not because he's Iranian. It's because he's a soldier, and when the hell does he have a chance to... Actually, I don't know if he's actually a soldier. He wears a uniform, but his hair is always looking way too good to be on any battlefield.
Targeted the New York Times.
But yeah, I would say he stinks because probably doesn't get a chance to take a shower very often.
He demanded accountability from media organizations and repeated claims of unfair treatment. This is Asia One. We'll join you after a short break.
Yeah, why don't you get your wires uncrossed? Yes, so I would love to know who would like to orally gratify that Ibrahim guy. As soon as a little more time passes, I will play that video again and try and get you guys to comment again, because nobody likes to comment in here for some reason. What is this dickhead saying?
Wall. Thank you, everyone. I'm afraid our time is up. Thank you for joining us.
They're still talking about the Czech Republic. Don't know about you, but I don't care. I don't care.
Talking about the issues facing the state, the massive budget problems, the problems in the school system with an LA school strike narrowly averted just hours ago.
Really?
And the problems with crime and water and high-speed rail wasting money and fraud. They're not talking about any of that. They're just talking about how much they're going to go after Trump. And Swalwell was the most anti-Trump of all of them.
I guess the question,
and that's why he rose to the top among Democrats.
Yeah, I guess the question is his share of votes, the people, the few that were supporting him, where is that going to go? So we're going to be following it. Joel, thanks so much. And for the latest news out of the Golden State, visit thecaliforniapost.com. All right. Plus, shocking video shows moments before a man breaks into a California home as a woman and her daughter were inside.
Where's your daughter?
Whoa! Oh no, homie, no! Oh no, you're gonna have to die.
Another day, same.
Yeah, no, this is why we have the Second Amendment right there. Make that man a poster child. Yeah, it's funny how, you have more of these violent crimes like this in America than in a lot of other places. Obviously, I'm not saying it's the only place in the world, but you would think that our criminals would at least be a little more intelligent. I mean, I don't know what the exact number is, but a lot of people in America have guns in the house, as opposed to other countries where something like that should be more prevalent, but it's not. It's very strange, isn't it? You would think that kind of stupidity would happen more in places where people can't protect themselves, because people would be taking advantage of that, right? But no. All right, what's Newsmax
of this? If we do see the Trump administration replace these judges with some who are more aligned with their crackdown on the protests, could we see maybe more college students deported more frequently?
Probably yes. Grisha, probably yes,
Why?
Which is what the president wants. Now, there is an appeal.
Reasons why you should sign up for a free membership here at ChristianFilipina.com. Believe it or not, Filipino women actually respect and appreciate American men. We're passionate, we value commitment, and we share your values. And of course, we speak English. That's important, right? At Christian
Oh, where this stuff come from? I had to restart my streaming software because my stream only on Rumble is having such problems staying on for some reason. So hopefully I just fixed that. I do apologize. But in so doing, I screwed up everything over here. So we'll go back.
So what do we call it in the other type of court that we're talking about now where these judges are? Is it due process, or what is it called?
That is a terrific question, John, and the Supreme Court has never resolved this.
All right, I got
due process is required when
from the
Pentagon.
Wants... Looks like we got an update from the Pentagon.
Force who we are as Americans, selfless sacrifice in service of others. From the backseater, Dude 44 Bravo, whose pure and unadulterated joy at seeing those helicopters come into the valley to get his front seater in daylight, because he knew the front seater did not have a jacket, and was so filled with heart-leaping joy at his front seater getting picked up.
Heart-leaping
to the
joy?
nighttime folks that went in and then got him, to the tanker forces that did the things that they had to do to give their own gas away, to the support packages, To those that went into the desert landing site not once, not twice, but 3 times as we fought through multiple contingencies. This was and is a joint force that has the guts to try, that does not quit, and who each and every day does the things that we must to dare to win.
Hit that like
button. No lives were lost. We succeeded because the joint force is always at the ready. They trust each other.
Hit the like button.
They trust their leaders, and they trust their training. And they remember first, foremost, and always that we do these things so that others may live, and we will never leave anyone behind. The success of Operation Fury thus far, and we hope it remains, culminates with this incredible rescue over the weekend, a direct example of the professionalism and courage of the United States military and our joint force. It's the service members on the front lines, our partners in the region, our teammates in the intelligence community, our civilian leaders in the OSW side of the house, the American workers who build the tools and weapons that we use, and the American people who back us up that help us to go do these things. I stand here humbled today, but frankly not surprised by what the joint force has been able to do. Their performance is fueled by a deep commitment to each other, our mission, and to our country. It is an incredible, deep honor for me to be a part of this joint force, and I'm humbled by the service and sacrifice each and every day that I am lucky enough to see. And finally, as I always do, I ask that we never forget our fallen and their families, especially those 13 fallen from Operation Epic Fury. May we always be worthy of their sacrifice and honor their legacy. And with that, sir, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take a few questions.
Is this from yesterday?
I'm
not sure if it's from yesterday.
First of all, thank you to our troops. What role is our military playing in escorting vessels through the Strait of Hormuz at this point? And the president said on Truth Social that the U.S. will be hanging around to make sure everything goes well. Obviously, Mr. Secretary, you just mentioned, we know the scars from hanging around in Iraq for decades. But what does that entail in terms of our military presence at this juncture?
Yeah, we'll be hanging around.
We're
not going anywhere. We're going to make sure Iran complies with this ceasefire, and then ultimately comes to the table and makes a deal. So we'll stay put, stay ready, stay vigilant, as the chairman laid out. Our troops are prepared to defend, prepared to go on offense, prepared to restart at a moment's notice with whatever target package would be needed in order to ensure that Iran complies. As far as the Strait, you saw the initial agreement that was struck, which is Iran's letting ships go through.
Democratic Party is aiming to change the name of the Strait of Hormuz to the Gay of Hormuz.
Job.
Just thought I'd let everybody know.
Militarily inside the Strait of Hormuz. I failed to mention Admiral Cooper's name. He's done a phenomenal job along with everybody at AFCENT, NAVCENT, and ARCENT, and all the components down there. Laying the groundwork for Iran doesn't have the same ability to defend it the way they did before. And so as the president has pointed out to the rest of the world, we barely get any of our energy out of the Strait. Just a tiny fraction. It's time for the rest of the world to step up and ensure that that stays open after President Trump and the War Department brought Iran to the place where they are voluntarily opening it right now.
And I have oil, Brent crude up on the screen, the graph.
And thank you both for the update. President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning that there has been a very productive regime change in Iran, and that there will be no enrichment of uranium, and the U.S. will work with Iran to dig up and remove the deeply buried nuclear dust. So I just have two questions here. So both you, Mr. Secretary, and the President have referred to a new regime in Iran. So is this not the regime that was at war with us for 47 years? And how do we, what do we think when we're saying that this is a new regime?
This is definitely from yesterday, or before, sorry. The only reason I won't play it now, or shouldn't play it now, is just because it screws up the timeline of what we're, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's relevant. If you want to watch it, feel free to go check it out, but I'm not going to play it because we are live right now, so I want to stay in the now.
Tragically, we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, which was not even a question before the war itself. And for Iran, the
Oh, this is that damn news station that doesn't want to get their... Yeah, get rid of those guys because they are just being problematic every time I turn around. So, if anybody wants me to check out anything in particular, by all means, drop a ticker symbol in the chat. Oh, yeah, here we go. Let's go back to this guy.
Yeah. On the inside of the house.
Right.
It's scary. Imagine me and the dad. Like, you're away from home.
What if he didn't get there in time?
No, but imagine being a woman and you see this guy outside of your door and you have your baby or your child at home, and then he still gets through that
Imagine
glass
having
door.
a gun.
Terrifying. And so, I obviously am the mindset of the dad. You see this on your ring camera, you are rushing home, and,
by the time you get there.
At that point.
Yeah. Great job, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks. All right, the problem with those applications is that when you're viewing and talking to people, you can't make a phone call or text at the same time. So you want to keep the guy distracted and anyway.
Right.
Carly has
I have a landline in my house, so you'd be able to use too.
Thank goodness they had the Ring doorbell footage after the Savannah Guthrie thing. I think a lot of people are buying those.
Right. Yeah, and there was a moment where that man says, "Where's your daughter?"
Yeah.
And as a father who isn't home at the time, imagine how your heart's...
Let me introduce you to my daughter right here.
News to get to on a story that, of course, we will never forget. The director of Camp Mystic testifying at a hearing yesterday as parents push a judge to block the camp from reopening this summer. This testimony comes after 27 children and staff died in that devastating flood last July.
That's
The
horrible.
director saying during his testimony, quote, "I wish we never had camp that summer." A mother of a young girl whose remains were never found saying this in response.
This is the same director of Camp Mystic that is asking 850 students to come join him at Cypress Lake in 6 weeks. I believe now is the time for the state of Texas to step in and deny the license for Camp Mystic's.
The director later said he did not receive early flood warnings and did not expect the flood to reach the level.
Okay, so
that
why?
it did.
I mean, I understand the mothers being upset. I understand that, but I mean,
Teen takeovers. The gathering came as police implemented a temporary juvenile curfew zone in the area, restricting anyone under 18 from gathering in groups of 9 or more.
9 or more.
Teen takeovers. The gathering came as police implemented a temporary juvenile curfew zone in the area, restricting anyone under 18 from gathering in groups of 9 or more
Why
between
9?
8 and 11 p.m.
Why 9? Make it
And
3.
stop avoiding small talk. A new study revealing that people consistently underestimate how interesting and enjoyable conversations about seemingly boring topics can be. Across the study's experiments, the respondents showed similar patterns of actually enjoying water cooler discussion they thought would be boring. One of the researchers saying, quote, "If we skip talking to a coworker at the coffee machine, a neighbor at the elevator, or a stranger at an event, we may be missing small moments of connection," adding, "Even a brief conversation about everyday life may be more rewarding than we expect."
Oh,
So
that
there-
is just so true, isn't it? So that being said, comment below and let's talk.
Because your small talk is on your Instagram. You go through it.
that's
You only
true.
give me the headlines.
So
we
you
become a headlines culture.
You should try it as an experiment today. Everywhere you go, be kind, be nice, have a conversation with someone and just see how you feel at the end of the day. You'll feel so much better.
It's just as easy to be
That
nice
is
and even
true.
more
How
so than
about
to
this?
be mean.
When I see, I'm going to go, "Where'd you get those shoes?" That's small talk, right? Like, I don't really care, but I'm making small talk.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really care about that. Making small talk is good though. We should get back to not being so adversarial. We're so adversarial these
To
days.
carry an enhancement measure for a crime. That means you continue to commit crime. And he was labeled that 3 separate times. So the courts, in addition to the prosecutors, and we've seen this in metropolitan areas like Wilmington, Charlotte in North Carolina, other areas, certainly not just North Carolina, is where there is no accountability for crime. And this is the inevitable result. When you have a consequence-free zone for committing crime over the years, inevitably you get to this position where someone finally is locked up, but it's because they're accused of a brutal, heinous crime.
But we've seen this play out so many times, Jason, and you've reported on a lot of it. My mind goes back to the North Carolina murder of that Ukrainian immigrant.
Oh, don't get me started on that animal.
This has repeatedly happened.
Yeah,
so
it sure has.
This time around, the people will actually remember all the victims of the past, especially in this situation.
Did you know?
U.S. servicemen.
Did you know there's an episode of The Simpsons where it's a Sideshow Bob episode. It's one of the first Sideshow Bob episodes, season 3, episode 20, where he's being hauled off to jail, and he says something about he's going to jail. He's in handcuffs, and he's like, very soon a Democrat will be in office, and as soon as that happens, I'm back on the streets. Season 3. That was early 90s. Simpsons has an episode for everything, baby. All right. I've just found something else I wanted to pull up. Let's see here.
And livestock, la bouillie. A thick, creamy breakfast porridge.
No, that wouldn't be it. I have no interest in thick, creamy breakfast porridges this morning. If you do, let me know. I'll be happy to pull up a video on thick, creamy breakfast porridge, but I'm going to keep old Pete Hegseth on just because I know this is from yesterday, but still.
They're just creating riper military targets for us to strike should they make the wrong decision at the
table.
Oil
coming down a little bit.
Right here.
A tiny bit.
Secretary Louis Martinez with ABC News. First, a question to General Kane, sir. In your personal opinion, were the risks of the Strait of Hormuz being closed because of the conflict, were they mitigated early enough in part of the decision-making process to lead up to the decision to take action against Iran? And in your opinion, is Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz? We just heard the Secretary say
it's
that
international
Iran
waters.
Is letting them ships through, which would imply that potentially it's not just. The Secretary also said that the U.S. That the strait is open. You did say that, sir. But
do me a favor, drop a like.
How can the U.S. ensure?
Hit the like button.
Secretary.
Hit the like button.
Can you say today that the United States achieved, the administration achieved the military goals that you've constantly delineated, but strategically, is that a victory because of that? And also, you said earlier that the president chose mercy, but you yourself had said 3 weeks ago that we will give no quarter to Iranian troops. How do you correlate those two? And do you think that your comments may have put American troops at risk?
No. I try to be nice up here, but you did listen to what I said, right? I laid out the objectives. We believe we've accomplished them, and it's a historic military victory. And President Trump has the option, as the commander-in-chief, to compel an adversary to the table, which is precisely what he did. And at the end, he chose to say, you know what, I'd rather talk to you at the table than obliterate your capability to export oil and fund your terror regime. So he did make that choice. That was his choice. He was a president of peace, and he's been willing to make those really tough calls that the American people elected him to do. Nothing we've done, not a single thing we've done. This is a typical, of course, it's ABC. Not a single thing we've done has put an American troop in more of a harm's way. We've only set our troops up to harm Iranian military capabilities, which they've done to devastating fashion and to great success. Mr. Chairman,
there's a lot in that question. I'd love to take that offline and answer it, but I'm struggling to find exactly what your question was, and that's probably me, not you. No. Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, it was an indictment framed as a question, so you're understanding. Go ahead, please. No, you've had your chance. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I believe so, based on the diplomatic negotiation.
Yeah, you got to keep these jackasses in check.
To see you. Sorry.
Mr. Kurd or Rahim Rashidi from Kurdistan. I am representative Kurdistan TV and Kurdistan 24 today. I have 2 questions. Mr. Secretary, will your forces stay in the region and continue to defend and protect your allies and take the responsibility for their security? Second question is, as you mentioned many times, that you have full control of Iran airspace. Do you still have this control or not?
Well, thank you for the question. The chairman mentioned the UAE and Bahrain and Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, who have fought shoulder to shoulder with us, especially in defense of our facilities, of our people, of their facilities, and we appreciate that. So that coordination, of course, will continue. And then when it comes to the skies over Iran, I would point to Exhibit A and Exhibit B, 7 hours in the day, 7 hours at night. If any foreign adversary attempted to do the same over our soil, they would have no ability to do so. Will they have a system here or there? Maybe. Do they have a network, a system that's capable of defending their skies? No, they don't. It's, as the chairman laid out, that's been dismantled, degraded, and destroyed. So it's a slight distinction, but an important one. Yes, right here. Go ahead.
General George in the middle of a war.
Excuse me, you got a question? Go ahead. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Two questions actually for you. So during this time, is the president are you still encouraging civilians to rise up against the regime, or are they satisfied with this new regime change, or is this two-week period to kind of see where that leads? Also, talked about the enriched uranium going in there.
I see how they get pissed off at these morons.
That require special forces or other military, our service members. Who would be basically going in there and trusted to going in there to get that uranium out?
Mm-hmm. Again, on the uranium, we're watching it. We know what they have, and they will give it up, and we'll get it, and we'll take it. If we have to, we can do it in any means necessary. So that's something the president is going to solve for. We already have Midnight Hammer with the place we put them in, and the reason it's in the situation where it is. The second one was about the people. Listen, I would love to see the Iranian people take advantage of this opportunity. They have been oppressed by the previous regime, and they'll have a new opportunity with this regime. That remains to be seen. That was not our objective in this effort, but they're brave people. Horrible things have been done to them by the previous regime. Tens of thousands targeted and killed and assassinated in a way the government never should. And we wish them the best, absolutely. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got to shut them down after the questions start getting stupid. I swear, I wouldn't have the patience that some of these people show. I really wouldn't. I think it's amazing that they've got the sort of control that they do. I would have been like, well, yeah, I won't even tell you what I would have said.
5 years from Citi, and Jane Fraser and the team go on to explain that they are 90% of the way to completing their programs around their back office, the regulatory reporting issue, something that they had really been hit through. So it's this transformation of Citi that Jane Fraser has been undertaking as CEO, and they are getting closer and closer to completing that. In the meantime, notching very strong numbers for trading.
Danny, great coverage this morning. We've seen those strong numbers for trading at JP Morgan as well. Citi up by 2% in the pre-market. Jared Cassidy of RBC is back with us for more. Jared, you had an outperform on JP Morgan,
pre-market looking
on
all
Wells
right.
Fargo, an outperform on Citi. Let's just sit on Citi. The revamp under Jane Fraser. How impressed have you been so far?
John, it's very impressive. As you can see from today's numbers, the return on tangible common equity was lifted up to about 13%. As it was just pointed out on your program, this is one of the better numbers we've seen in quite some time. And she's done a very good job in divesting the unprofitable non-U.S. consumer businesses. The last one up is, of course, the IPO for the Mexican subsidiary. They have the anchor investors, so we should see that this year. They have their big investor day coming up in May, John, and I think you're going to hear a lot of positive commentary about the outlook for Citi at that investor day.
I was struck by the commentary that I heard from
PPI
Jane Fraser, in addition to the positivity that you're expressing, and that the results.
Our PPI minutes coming in at 8:30.
Start in 2026. How do you pair that?
We should see something happening in the Bitcoin space.
Sort of warning discussions we heard from the CEOs of Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and beyond.
Lisa, it's a good point because, the first quarter was a tale of two quarters. When you think about coming into the year, up until the end of February, the quarter was very strong in many of the different areas for Citi and its peers. Then the breakout of hostilities at the end of February increased that volatility, particularly in the capital markets area. So there is still a lot of uncertainty out there, but should the hostilities in the Middle East start to die down and we get this resolved sometime in the second quarter, that points to a very healthy second half of the year for the banks like Citigroup.
You were talking about what's left in terms of the revamp. Jane Fraser said that the bank was about 90% of the way to completing the programs it established to fix back office and regulatory reporting problems as pegged by regulators a number of years ago. How different is the bank today than, say, 5 years ago? And how does that sort of set us up in the current environment?
I think it's very different, Lisa, because obviously you've had a change in leadership compared to 5 years ago. And I think that this leadership, led by Jane Fraser, is very focused on delivering the numbers and holds people accountable within the organization. And that's probably one of the biggest differences. And it's showing up on the bottom line. And so once they finish the complete revamp,
I'm going to go over here.
It's 90% completed. Once they finish it, then
I'm going to go over here to Fox.
Sunk. The leaders are dead. Their economy is in ruin, yet they're still not willing to come to the table and negotiate.
Absolutely. And when we look at the Iranian economy, even before Operation Epic Fury, the Iranians were considering moving their capital from Tehran because they couldn't get water to their own people. Remember, tens of thousands were in the streets of Iranian cities earlier this year protesting against the dire economic situation inside of Iran. And intelligence officials in the region say the estimate is in the billions of dollars that they've lost as a result of this conflict. They are decimated not just on the battlefield, but also within their economy. And the one card that they have left as it relates to their energy program is on the list of targets for the United States and Israel if the Iranians are unwilling to make a deal. And so you have to step back here and look at the situation for the Iranian regime. They entered into this war with the United States already in a dire economic situation. Given the fact that these strikes were so successful, striking into the heart of the regime, not just the officials, but also the banking system and the military echelon that was supported by the money that was released during prior administrations, such as the Obama administration, the Iranian regime is in a place right now that if they do not make a deal and strikes continue against not just military targets, but their energy infrastructure, they're going to be in a place with such high domestic internal pressure that the regime could collapse in the future. And that is what the Israelis are saying when we talk with sources here in the region. But again, when you look at the situation at the negotiating table, the Iranians have one choice. They either give up their nuclear program or this war resumes.
Yeah, very simple. They have not lived up to their bargain. It opened up the strait. There was just a trickle, and now there's a blockade. Thanks so much, Trey. Sure.
You would think if that happened in your country, if that happened in America, if our economy was in ruins, if we were worried about everything blowing up around us, if we were in the middle of a war and being attacked and nothing was going well, you would think that we wouldn't re-elect the president, right? You would think they would be able to topple the leadership there and say no more of this.
No guns.
Yeah. But they don't have the weapons.
The people have no weapons. And by the way, their ship tracking data suggests there is roughly 100 million barrels of Iranian oil remaining at sea that still can be sold sanction-free because we let some of that get out right away to keep the price down. But 7 million now has been stopped from going out.
Well, and because we've blocked their ports and their coastal areas, Iran can't ship products into the country. They can't even export their oil. They are losing $435 million a day.
Well, apparently, according to the negotiation, they still want only a 5-year delay on enrichment. Sorry, that's just not on the table. So, anyway, Congressman Eric Swalwell announcing his resignation from the House ahead of a possible expulsion vote.
The Democrats' decision to step down follows 4 allegations of sexual misconduct. And later today, one of those women is expected to speak out.
Alex Hogan is live in Washington with more. Hey, Alex.
Hi, Brian, Ainsley, and Lawrence. What a dramatic 48 hours. 2 days ago, Congressman Eric Swalwell was one of the leading Democrats in California's governor's race. He since dropped out of that campaign, and he's now leaving Congress. Swalwell shared this message online, writing, quote, "I'm deeply sorry to my family, staff, and constituents for mistakes in judgment I've made in my past. I will fight the serious false allegations made against me. However, I must take responsibility and ownership for the mistakes I did make. It's also wrong for my constituents to have me distracted from my duties. Therefore, I plan to resign my seat in Congress." Swalwell faces allegations of sexual misconduct, including from a former staffer. The House Ethics Committee announced it is launching an investigation as both lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are urging him to walk away.
People who are in positions of power and authority over others
need to be held accountable when they take advantage of that position. And frankly, I'm glad that he'll be gone. What surprises me is how these guys keep doing this over and over. He's not the first, and he probably won't be the last.
And amid bipartisan demands that he step down, Congressman Tony Gonzalez says he'll leave Congress early. The third-term Republican lawmaker is accused of having a coercive sexual relationship with a staff member who later killed herself. Gonzalez is currently under investigation by the House Ethics Committee, and he posted online, "There is a season for everything, and God has a plan for us all. When Congress returns tomorrow, meaning today, I will file my retirement from office. It has been my privilege to serve the great people of Texas." So despite both of these congressmen making these announcements, it's not clear when Gonzalez or Swalwell will officially leave Congress. And because of that, guys, there still could be an expulsion vote, so something to watch in just the next hours ahead.
Wow. I was just hoping they passed the DHS funding, but now they got a whole bunch of ethics things to handle. Alex, thanks so much.
And that presser will be at 12:30. You can see it there at the bottom of your screen.
And you just wonder who's the front runner now. Steve Hilton winning in most polls, but who's number two? And is it Tom Steyer, the very unpopular billionaire who nobody wanted? Now they feel as though with Katie Porter is a little bit damaged.
There's another Republican, too. So the way it works in California, it's a jungle election.
Yeah.
So the top two are the ones that move forward. Doesn't matter what. It could be two conservatives. It could be, two liberals. All right. Authorities in the Bahamas deciding not to charge the husband of a missing American voter. This comes 10 days after he told authorities his wife fell overboard.
Oh, the CEO. Financial losses don't let her sleep. Well, she should control who enters the company's network. This boss is counting lawsuits instead of sheep. Next time, he must protect his employees' data. Someone's having a ruined reputation nightmare. Lesson learned. It's better to block online threats. Secure your network and stay compliant with NordLayer's Toggle Ready platform.
I work in logistics. One e-bike, multiple operations. We deal with precious payload, executive transport, procurement. Sometimes I also take on solo field operations. Moving this much inventory, it takes a lot of power. Sometimes the routes go long, so the extra battery really helps. And we're modular. Have to be. We do events, special requests. It's the teamwork that keeps us going. But we never forget that having fun is part of the job. And it's real important that everything runs smoothly. Rain or shine. Got to keep the stakeholders happy, right? At the end of the day, it's about having the best team ever. I love my job.
He thinks he will go back to Marsh Harbor, where his sailboat remains, and continue looking for his wife.
Okay, Dana Marie, thank you so much.
A lot of questions.
Yeah. But you can't charge him. It's he's saying he didn't do it. If you don't have a body, you don't.
Physical evidence
no one knows
right now. So if they can find something, I mean, you don't necessarily need a body to charge for murder, but they need more than what they have right now.
If you don't jump out of a dinghy to save your wife, that should be criminal.
Should be. It's
most men would do the right thing and jump in and go get your wife, but that's not what he did. All right, Carly, over to you with some headlines.
Yeah, guys, new details on just a horrific story here. It's arraignment day for the suspects who police say are behind the shooting of a 7-month-old baby in Brooklyn. 2 men are being charged with second-degree murder. One was driving the moped that the shooter was on when he fired into a crowd of people. That baby girl was shot in the head while sharing a stroller with her 2-year-old brother. He was grazed in the back. Investigators say this was a gang-related shooting, and the suspects were allegedly targeting the baby's father. Today, President Trump is set to meet with U.S. Ambassador to China, David Perdue, after threatening Beijing with new tariffs if the regime provides military assistance to Iran.
But I hear news reports about China giving the shoulder missiles, what's called a shoulder missile, anti-aircraft missile. I doubt they would do that because I have a relationship and I think they wouldn't do that. But maybe they did a little bit at the beginning, but I don't think they would anymore. No. But if we catch them doing that, they get a 50% tariff, which is a staggering That's a staggering amount.
This comes as President Trump is set to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping next month. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is opening a probe against Lululemon, claiming the athleisure company is misleading customers about potentially cancer-causing chemicals called PFAs in its products. Paxton saying in a statement, "I will not allow any corporation to sell harmful, toxic materials to consumers at a premium price under the guise of wellness and sustainability. If Lululemon has violated Texas law, it will be held accountable." Lululemon denying Paxton's claim, saying it does not currently use PFAs in its products. The company says PFAs were phased out in 2023 and previously only used a small percentage of water repellent items. Brand new footage shows the moment the Artemis II return capsule was opened up after splashing down in the Pacific Ocean on Friday. Astronaut Reed Wiseman posting this video to social media, thanking the men and women who first greeted them back to Earth. Meanwhile, Weissman's fellow crew member Victor Glover getting a hero's welcome when he returned to his hometown in Texas. His father speaking with Will Kane yesterday about his son's historic achievements.
You know, the word proud just doesn't capture it. It's so huge and so significant. The love I have for my son and for all of my family. Proud just doesn't do it justice. As they launched on this mission, I kind of said that my chest was already out to the moon before they ever even got there. And it's still out there even after they've made it back safely.
The entire crew is set to give a press conference this Thursday. That is just a feel-good moment right there, guys, with that dad proud of his son.
We're proud of that dad. He raised an amazing, what seems to be an amazing young man.
Yes.
He was praising the Lord when he was in space. He's an astronaut, which means he's brilliant. He's very smart and humble. I love him.
That was great. It was so funny. One of the reporters tried to make it about race with him. And he goes, you know, obviously I'm proud. I'm one of the first. But he goes, I look forward to the day where that's not the topic of conversation. I heard him say that.
Because he kept trying to say, first woman, first Canadian.
He's like, no.
He's like, first, African-American.
All right, well, President Trump surprises a DoorDash driver at the White House.
Are the White House good tippers? Do you know?
Wait.
Potentially.
Yes, very.
That grandma pocketing $11,000 thanks to the president's no tax on tips policy. She joins us live next.
Hey, Grandma. Hello.
Fucking commercials. Wow. Sorry for the commercials there. Let's go back over to Newsmax and see what they're doing.
These talks again. There could be others in line as well. And it's also Pakistan that is essentially moving messages from one side to the other. This country certainly is making a push right now to get the two sides back at the negotiating table. And there is a little bit there's really a necessity to do this as quickly as possible, because remember that we are currently in a ceasefire between the United States and Israel on one side and Iran on the other, a ceasefire that runs out in just a few days' time. It's a 2-week-long ceasefire, and there is no information right now on how or when it could possibly be extended, and indeed what happens when it comes to an end. Do the two sides go back to attacking each other again? We'll have to wait and see. But that is part of why Pakistan is pushing to get these talks up and running as quickly as possible. The backdrop to this, of course, are those increasing tensions in the Strait of Hormuz. That U.S. Navy blockade, at least in theory, is happening now. It should be underway, but we don't exactly know how it is being implemented, how it is, in fact, how Iranian vessels are being complied to actually not move through the Strait of Hormuz. Those are all details we'll have to wait and see over the next few hours. All
right. Well, so far it's looking like we might have a decent day today. There's a lot of green on the board. There's a fair amount of red, for pre-market at least. All the major players look like they're up. Gold and silver. Silver looks like it's been on a nice steady rise. Nothing too spectacular though, but that's largely because the dollar has been on a decline. And that is because oil, I assume. I was expecting oil to be higher by now, but I suppose we're just waiting on more of a catalyst in the market, right? And the fact that we've got a lot more new oil reserves being put on the market, it's hedging against the activity in the Strait of Hormuz. I really was expecting crude to be higher by now, and I'm sure a lot of other people were too. Bitcoin took a jump yesterday about 6 p.m. and it has been holding it. And today we've got some the PPI coming, so that should actually be here in about 6 or 7 minutes. So we might see Bitcoin do something around then. Drop a ticker symbol in the chat, and I'll be happy to pull something up. But do me a favor and hit the like button while we peruse the news.
Broker peace between Israel and Lebanon right after the break.
No break here. Let's go over to Bloomberg real quick and see what these jerks are talking about.
Coast of the United States in that trans-Pacific trade, where previously it had alternative routes and those that were quite lucrative for shippers going through those canals. More than likely, what we'll see is a reset at some point, because that consuming public in the Middle East is very strong. Albeit only 10% of worldwide container trade, the buying power for furniture, footwear, perishable commodities, and other retail goods will continue to be a primary market for those serving the Middle East.
I know there will be a delay even when the Strait opens, but we haven't even seen the Red Sea get back to normal levels, given what took place in the previous years with the Houthis. When do you think the Strait of Hormuz will actually get back to normal levels after there is a more lasting ceasefire?
That's the biggest question. And I don't think it's going to be a straight line, Anne-Marie. One day we're going to get a message that says all clear. I think this is going to be an iterative process. We're hoping that both sides can get back to the negotiating table to find a way towards some semblance of a truce, and then start having a conversation about the commercial implications and how we restart this engine. Right now, this blockade is for negotiating purposes to try to put some pressure on the system, and especially with the price of oil over $100 a barrel, this is a huge revenue pop for some, and it could be a tremendous cost implication for those that can't get their oil and energy products to market. Probably at the same time, there's some minesweeping going on in preparation for the day we can see that strait open up a little bit. But when we've gone from basically 110 ships a day down to just a trickle, it will take some time to get these products moving in and out.
We're all hoping for the best, Gene. Appreciate your time. You're a gentleman. Thank you. The Port of Los Angeles Executive Director, Gene Soroka, on the situation, the congestion in certain ports in Asia and the workarounds those guys have been playing up and trying to work through over the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, a lot of this really goes down to a fundamental question that a lot of people are asking, which is how much is the concept of free passageway on the seas truly in jeopardy or becoming obsolete? And how much does this set a precedent for that versus, say, some of the previous conflicts and what's happened there? And that's really going to be crucial to a lot of the supply chains.
Things have got messy very, very quickly. Up next on the programme, we'll talk about the data, PPI data set to cross. We'll get reaction from Stephanie Roth of Wolf Research. She's with us to break it down. Plus, the latest from the earnings call with JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon and some comments on there on Kevin Walsh. That conversation up next.
Cool. We will definitely tune in for that. Get that PPI data. Okay, that's not on there anymore.
Somewhere to basically mobilize to also go onto land. and for some kind of ground operation or operation. So these are all the things just like we saw on the naval and the Air Force side of things pre-February 28th. This is now happening with ground troops, either on the Marines or the Army side. Now, whether they go in or not sure, but just as before the campaign started, the capability is now being positioned. Whether it'll be used or not is the open question.
And I'm posting this right here. This is actually from Trey Yingst over at Fox News. He's our buddy over there who has been on the ground gathering all the latest from Israel. He says a 100-kilogram warhead was used on the Iranian missile that slammed into Tel Aviv early this morning. Significant damage was caused to a residential area. Can you explain to me
100-kilogram
the fact
warhead,
that the
huh?
aerial defense system is essentially able to intercept so many missiles, but we're also seeing more of these strikes that are happening. We had one in Tel Aviv, one elsewhere, and injuries reported.
Do me a favor, drop a like.
So this is the challenge with missile defense. Even if the systems are incredibly effective, and they have been over the past month, not only in Israel, but the Gulf countries as well, either using their own capabilities or those provided by the U.S. or already on U.S. facilities or U.S. military bases. The intercept rate of cruise missiles and drones, now I don't have all the data, but is at least in the 95 to 98 to 99% range. So that is a pretty significant demonstration of effectiveness and capability. But
hit the like button!
Because Iran has fired thousands of their own weapons, that unfortunately some of them have been able to get through the different missile defense systems, and the flight path of a ballistic missile is completely different from that of a drone, which flies lower and slower. So sometimes the drones are able to get through because they don't have the same sort of profile or signature that a ballistic missile does, which may be theoretically more easier to knock down with the current capabilities. And how many more of the drones that does Iran have that they could use, which would then have different kind of payloads against them? Open question. And even on the ballistic missile. So even if the intercept rate is 98%, unfortunately, still some are going to be able to get through. And that's what we've seen. And that's not unique to even what's happened this year. Going back to last year in 2025, Iran was able to successfully have ballistic missile strikes in Israel as well, which killed people and injured people and caused physical destruction. So this is just the state of this type of conflict, where one side possesses a significant inventory of these types of weapons, and even though they're using them, and even though most of them, or the large majority, are getting intercepted, still unfortunately some can get through.
And of course, that's what we saw and what we have seen over the past several days since all of this kind of unfolded, those missiles that have been striking.
I'm going back over here to Bloomberg for the
data in just a moment. PPI is just around the corner, seconds away. Mike McKee will break it down for you in just a moment. The scores heading into that. Equity futures positive by a third of 1%, 1 hour away from the opening bell. We're up 0.6 on the Nasdaq. On the Nasdaq 100, a 9-day winning streak, and it could be 10-day. Phenomenal. Could be a 10-day winning streak on the Nasdaq 100. In the bond market, we're set up as follows. Yields on 10s just about unchanged throughout much of this morning. Let's call it 4:30. With your economic data, Mike McKee has more. Hey, Mike.
Good morning, John. It's a little bit better news than anticipated. PPI on a headline basis up just 0.5%. The expectation was for 1.1%. On a year-over-year basis, that puts us at 4% from 3.4. The expectation was we'd hit 4.6%. The core up just 0.1%. The forecast was for 0.4. Last month it was 0.5, and that puts the year-over-year for that at 3.8%. The core ex-food, energy, and trade is up 3.6%. That's a tick up from the last time. In the March rise for final demand prices, 1.6% advance in the index for final demand goods. Prices for final demand services were unchanged. And what's interesting about that is that final demand services were the issue in last month's big rise in terms of what happened. The one thing I want to check here is what happened with the services prices that we anticipated would go up. And that's the main issue here. For for airline fares and things like that, it doesn't look like that's immediately going to come up. So I'm going to leave that for you guys. But airline fares were supposed to go up. Gasoline prices, of course, going up significantly, and those are major issues. I want to leave you with one other thought, and that is that you have reported that the senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott, who's the chairman of the Banking Committee, says that that Kevin Warsh, the Fed chair designate, will have a hearing next week. I'd point out that on Tuesday, the 21st, Christopher Waller, the Fed governor who was considered for the chairmanship, is giving remarks on how he would change the Fed in the future. It'd be very interesting if the two of them end up on the same day.
Mike McKee, thank you, sir.
So I'm curious to know how gas prices are in whatever area you're in. I live in South Carolina, and honestly, the gas prices aren't really that bad around here. Yes, they've gone up a little bit, but by and large, nowhere near what the fearmongers were saying that they'd go to. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're hovering somewhere in the mid $3-ish dollars a gallon. So I'm curious to hear what gas prices are like in your neck of the woods. So comment and tell me how much how much you last saw gas at.
This is going to be the key question.
Do me a favor and hit the like button too.
Moves it forward slightly, but unless Tom Tillis decides he's going to vote for it, he could just be stuck in this committee. And we don't know if Tom Tillis is going to vote for it until we know what goes on with the DOJ probe on Jay Powell.
In addition to that, we don't know what Chairman Powell himself will do with regards to his future.
Yeah, whether he'll stay on as a governor even after his term as Fed chair is up. He said he will make that determination at a later point. Unclear what the characters are going into that. Nonetheless, it's even less clear to know what exactly the Fed is going to do with the panoply of potential data as well as events that are coming down the pike. Kevin Warsh might want to hang tight before he has to make the argument to cut rates, given the fact that there's a lot of dissent on the committee and some real pressure coming from the White House.
So we've got two things to do here. We need to talk about the future of the Federal Reserve. We need to start on the economic data. PPI softer than expected.
Good.
Pushed that through the bond market. No big moves here. The US 10-year yield is unchanged so far. In the equity market, still positive by about a third, call it a quarter of 1% higher on the S&P 500. With us around the table, Stephanie Roth of Wolfe Research. Stephanie, good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Your reaction to that data for the month of March?
Yeah, so the details that matter for core PCE is really what we're looking at for. Airlines were up similar to CPI, 2.8. Physician services were kind of light. Finance wasn't too strong. So our tracking for core PCE for March should look, in the 0.2% range. So when we're thinking ahead, the question, though, is are airline fares going to start increasing more materially in the upcoming months?
Probably.
And that's when it's going to become a bigger question. And I think that's what the market kind of told you after CPI is, yeah, okay, we get that the March data were okay, but what happens in the months after that? And that kind of fits with our move that we made somewhat recently, pushing out our Fed cuts from previously 2 cuts this year to now 1, and then we added 1 cut into 27.
What's your base case for inflation? What's the trajectory of things through the summer and into the fall?
Base case is that you'll stay around 3%. We think you'll actually end the year at 3.1, but that, of course, compares to the Fed's 2.7. Our expectation is the Fed's ultimately going to have to revise that up, which then makes it a little bit more difficult for the Fed to be cutting in the next couple months.
That said, doesn't the fact that you're getting less inflationary pressure heading into this period a positive with respect to the Fed's ability to cut rates? I mean, doesn't it sort of take off the table the idea that inflation was heating up in a dramatic way that would force...
Hang on. I believe we've got a Mr. Trump.
It's over. The fact that they will never have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah,
Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
But President Trump is not backing down and vowed to use the U.S. military to block all Iranian ports around the country and in the Strait of Hormuz.
So now Iran is doing absolutely no business, and we're going to keep it that way very easily.
The president hopes it forces Tehran to accept a peace deal and open the Strait of Hormuz after Iran shut down access in late February.
What would matter is how much a blockade shut down of the whole world's production. A lot of it just depends how long does this go.
But on Monday, the head of the Iranian parliament said it would only make gas prices worse, saying, quote, soon you'll be nostalgic for $4 to $5 gas.
What do you know?
1/5
of the oil and gas
this coming
the world
weekend,
needs
and the
to
market's
function is
generally
now
feeling a little better. You've got crude oil a little lower.
The
So
two
all
sides
things
remain
considered,
open to
again,
a deal.
more
And President Trump says the
dis-
U.S. won't agree to anything that allows Iran to have a nuclear weapon. In New York, Caroline Elliott, Fox News.
I witnessed a murder.
What? I'm going to run over to Schwab.
Morgan put out, good earnings, but Jamie Dimon playing that risk manager, he came out with there's increasingly complex set of risks in the market right now, and he names several things. One of them, of course, geopolitics being war. Diane.
All right, great stuff. Thank you, Kevin. That's Kevin Hinks, co-host of Fast Market, with the latest look at inflation. Now, in a continuation of our team coverage, I want to bring in Alex Coffey, co-host of Next Gen Investing and senior equities contributor. Alex, I know you're across this latest with Novo Nordisk and OpenAI partnership, but before we dive into that, I'm curious to know your take on this latest PPI data and your view on the markets today.
Yeah, I mean, the level of the inflation is certainly elevated because of the conflict, but as you guys discussed, well below expectations. So it's always an expectations game, Diane, and right now it's coming in cooler despite being a hot print. So it's sort of a dichotomy. I'm with Kevin. Not much of a market mover, especially when it's anticipated. PPI's value in my mind is more when you're not in an inflationary or deflationary cycle. It can be kind of that clue that that's starting to kick off. So if we were at 2% and all of a sudden it jumps to 4%, it might get your attention. But this was expected. We knew that the inputs were going to drive this higher.
Yeah, it hasn't
All right,
changed very much in the market.
Novo Nordisk, the latest there, those shares ticking higher in the pre-market off the back of this news about a partnership with OpenAI. Tell us the details.
Yeah, Novo is partnering with OpenAI to speed up the development of new obesity drugs and other medicines. It's going to integrate OpenAI's tools across R&D, manufacturing, commercial operations. The goal is to identify drug targets faster, design better clinical trials, and extract clearer insights from the data that they collect. Their CEO says that this is about supercharging scientists, not replacing them, kind of making the comparison of shifting from the fax machine to the email. And then it says that this deal is building on Novo's existing AI push. If you recall, they already have a research partnership with NVIDIA that they announced last year. This all happens too, Diane, as they're working to regain their market position and market share for these GLP-1 obesity drugs, where Eli Lilly has really started to gain ground. And then in terms of this OpenAI partnership, pilot programs are set to start immediately with full integration expected by the end of the year.
All right, thank you, Alex. That's Alex Coffey, co-host of Next Gen. Coming up, we'll dive into the world of crypto and discuss how the war with Iran is impacting Bitcoin and beyond. Morning Movers, we'll be right back.
Cool. Pay attention to that. I'm going to put on this guy on Euronews.
No hay vacío absoluto, entonces la única forma de hacerlo es un satélite que lleve una propulsión completamente eléctrica o renovable, que no necesite combustible.
Crias has now created an engine that captures atmospheric air, ionizes it into plasma to generate continuous thrust. It allows for missions in very low Earth orbits, which are usually not possible due to atmospheric drag.
Okay, cool.
A través de placas solares.
That's cool. That's hardly newsworthy. It's looking like a fairly slow news day, man. We're just waiting to see what happens in the Gay of Hormuz, apparently. Would you support them changing the name from the Strait of Hormuz to the Gay of Hormuz? Come on now. Let's be progressive.
A couple of days ago, 2 U.S. destroyers, the Peterson and the Murphy, sailed through that region. So we would expect to see U.S. operations continue in and around the Strait of Hormuz. They would be neutralizing any of these fast attack boats. But their focus now is going to be twofold: the blockade and those anti-mine operations in the Strait of Hormuz, because they're trying to free up those 800 trapped ships in the Persian Gulf.
And I wanted to ask you, because we talk about the blockade, but also the blockage of the ports, is one more impactful? Is the fact that the ports are now closed, is that going to be more of a resentful, kind of a bigger impact on this conflict?
Well, it's going to be significant for Iran, because Iran has been banking on that oil, and it's been one thing that has been kind of driving the Iranian economy. They've been able to run ships back and forth, and really one of the things we've been seeing in the first part of this conflict is Iran was setting the pace. Their blockade was very selective. They were forcing ships to come through their channel, their newly defined channel in the northern part. Now we're having kind of counter blockades, so it's a tale of two blockades. You have
All right, I want to see what
Yahara has more. Hey, Yahara.
Hi, John. Recapping the data we just got, producer prices rising 5% in March. It's less than the 1.1% that was estimated, but follows a 0.7% rise in February. Companies are navigating a surge in energy costs tied to the Iran war. Stripping out food and energy, producer prices rising just 0.1% in the month.
Said research and strategy, Market Vector Research. Thank you so much for joining us, Martin. So let's talk the state of crypto. We got Bitcoin creeping higher this morning, approaching 75,000.
Just a little bit.
Having a stronger move, up more than 5% right now. What has been interesting about the backdrop during this war with Iran, which now we're in amid a ceasefire and peace talks happening, is Bitcoin has held up a little better, but it also comes in light of that, protraction that we've seen since October. Talk to us about the correlation between Bitcoin and geopolitical risk.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy. You just look at what markets actually did. I mean, the S&P is within the 2.4% of its all-time high, and Bitcoin is up 12 to 13% since the conflict began. And that's the market verdict, and it's telling you something important. So there's never been a first-round deal in a major geopolitical negotiation. The historical median is 3 to 4 rounds before any breakthrough. And Iran said no more talks Saturday, signaled willingness to return 48 hours later.
Did you know that in Iran, it only costs about $2,000-ish to mine one Bitcoin? It's because they have introduced government subsidies, government electrical subsidies, so that people are more inclined to mine Bitcoin. By doing this, they aim to control the crypto space, which is a joke, but that's a pretty damn good deal, if you ask me. How long does it take to mine a Bitcoin? I have no idea. Probably about a year. But yeah, I mean, any of those mining capabilities or any of those mining rigs that are out there, there are some that get a surprise kick up when they are mining those blocks. I don't pretend to know about mining Bitcoin. I wish I did, but I don't know that much.
Bitcoin is returning to trading more like gold as a safe haven.
Yeah, if you think of the attributes of Bitcoin, it has a lot in common with gold. It's scarce, it's durable, right? You can't inflate it away. But the thing is with Bitcoin, it's sometimes positively correlated to risk assets, sometimes not. That's the reason why I like it in combination with gold, because gold and Bitcoin over a longer term time series is almost zero. And so both belong to me in a store of value bucket. And so as we have now a regime where you can say that it's about the devaluation of fiat assets and you need the debasement hedge, I think both assets belong into one portfolio. And as gold is now down since the Iran attacks, Bitcoin is up. That proves my thesis here. And I think investors should then allocate accordingly. They need both as a store of value.
Okay, Martin, you say that the Strait of Hormuz blockade is a crypto catalyst. Why do you see it that way?
I mean, the Strait of Hormuz, it's a second order effect. And I think the market hasn't fully priced that. Yeah, what Trump has done by blockading the Strait is drag China directly into this negotiation. Yeah, previously China had no reason to push for resolution. Their ships were getting through. They were buying Iranian oil at a discount. And that's over now. So China's oil supply is the pressure point, which means Beijing has a real incentive to push Tehran towards a deal and a resolution. And the reopening of the strait would be a broad risk-on catalyst. And what history shows us is that Bitcoin tends to move faster and further than equities when geopolitical risk premiums compress quickly. So you can say paradoxically, this is exactly the scenario where sitting on the sidelines and waiting for clarity is how you miss the move.
That's true.
Martin, let me ask you this. You say the fiscal backdrop is more important than macro risk as it relates to Bitcoin. Tell us a little bit more about that viewpoint.
Yeah, so it's all about fiscal, in my opinion. Yeah, defense spending proposals on the table right now could push the U.S. deficit to levels we haven't seen outside of genuine wartime emergencies. And that puts structural upward pressure on the 10-year yield, and that changes the calculus for a lot of asset classes. Yeah, so gold made all-time highs last year in a non-inflationary environment. That wasn't a CPI trade, as I told you. That was a fiscal dominance trade. And investors, they are losing confidence in fiscal discipline and moving into scarce assets. And Bitcoin is increasingly being read through exactly the same lens by institutional capital. And that's a very different conversation than the one we are having about Bitcoin 3 years ago, where it was just about having a higher beta to the stock market. And again, I think it's the digital cousin to gold, and both belong into a portfolio in a regime for fiscal dominance.
And then, Martin, let me ask you this. I'm curious to know if you have a target on Bitcoin for year-end, because last year was a year when everyone was really bullish, and then had all these targets like 150,000, some beyond
Oh, those targets are still coming, baby.
Target?
I mean, my target is, I make it, I go back to the technicals, because I still think we are in a down year. Why? Because we have this halving cycle. Where Bitcoin supply is getting halved every 4 years, and we are now in a down year, right? 2014 was down 60%, 2018 was down 72%,
yes,
2022 was down also around 60%, and now we are in a soft year again. But I think here is the nuance. So each cycle's drawdown compresses as the institutional base grows. And I think we are currently in a range between 65 and 75. And I think holding the 74K mark now is very important. But generally speaking, investors who entered patiently at the equivalent phase in prior cycles were well rewarded 12 to 18 months later. So this is a more constructive entry window than the headlines suggest. But if you want to have a mark, I think if we hold the 74K, important is that we then reach 81, and then above 81, that would be a very constructive environment towards the 90s. And that's where I'm looking at. So I can't give you these outrageous 500K numbers, but I think investing longer term now is a good possibility to add.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Martin. That's
right. Now, I pulled up this is Indian news, and I've got it cataloged as ridiculous because this channel is ridiculous with their chaos. Just to see how long we can listen to this crap. If they've got any sound going on at all. I may have spoken too soon. Yep, another one of these news networks from India that can't seem to get their stuff straight. They can't seem to stay on point or get their bandwidth sorted out. I'm going to go over to another European news source. This is actually from France.
Action to reduce the size of the new tower. The renovation plan actually included several extra floors, but now the tower will rise by less than 10 meters, down from the 22 meters originally planned. Yet for Patrice, the skyscraper will always spoil Paris.
We're here on Rue de Rennes with elegant buildings and wrought iron balconies that make a beautiful perspective.
Okay.
And then right next to that, you have this massive black block, a slab, vertical lines, no character whatsoever.
Oh, who gives a shit? For Christ's sake. If that's all you've got to complain about, then that means you're doing well. No. sorting through some news sources. They're all pretty stale this morning. Not really much to report. We are about 38 minutes ahead of the market opening. So far, everything's looking pretty green. Pretty green. There is some red in the finance, health, non-durables, and energy. But this is the fluctuating we see. You know what I mean? Friday, it was the other way around, right? When you see energy and everything doing well, here lately, of course, then you see everything else red. Tomorrow, it'll probably look that way, if I had to guess. Bitcoin running sideways from its jump last night around 6 o'clock. Oil has come down quite a bit. These are futures, by the way. You've got your nano futures, which are the ones that I tend to invest in when I can afford it. And then there's your Brent crude oil futures. And this is your CFDs on WTI. Dollar came down as well. I keep a close eye on the Dixie. And then silver has been making a pretty good, steady run up. I'm digging what silver's doing. You know, if it wasn't for this war, I do believe we would have seen a lot of different things going on with silver. I made a prediction a couple of weeks back based on the Fibonacci patterns. Once this war in Iran clears up and we can all get on with our investment lives, I do believe we're going to see silver run up probably to about $150 an ounce, double where it is from now. But as it approaches the 130 to 140 mark, if you're invested, I would strongly urge that when it starts to climb up towards that area, I would urge you to get out of it right around 130. Sell out. Sell it all. And not financial advice, right? But the reason for that would be because once it gets up into that range, I do believe, and this is all according to the Fibonacci's, you can verify this yourself, I do believe we're going to see it come way back down by probably 30% or more. So once it gets up to about 130, I do believe you're going to see it come down to relatively about $100, $90 maybe. And then that would be your time to buy back in. And once that consolidation finishes, I do believe it's going to surge well on up to about 200 an ounce. How long is this going to take? Who knows? Who knows? We've watched silver take a decade to get to where it is now. But most of that movement was in a short amount of time. And it has everything to do with what's going on geopolitically. So as long as there's peace and tranquility in the world, you'll see it take quite a long time to make this move. But that's the move. I'm telling you. You watch. But like I said, again, I can't begin to tell you when that's going to happen. You and me both would love to know. Okay. What is Newsmax
The
talking
Pope in Algeria, I feel excited because
that makes one of us.
Christian, anyone
who
should
cares?
follow the right.
Who cares? I don't care what the Pope is doing. I don't know about you, but I just don't give a damn. I just don't give a damn. Ooh.
2,000-pound bombs. I happen to have a little first-hand knowledge of what a 2,000-pound bomb can do. And it's a very impressive capability, particularly if you're going after underground facilities, you know, those deeply entrenched facilities with a lot of overhead cover. We can now fly B-52 bombers well into Iran to hit some of these hardened targets. That's a capability we didn't have at the beginning of the war. Now we can do that.
I'm going to run and have a smoke real quick. I'll be right back, okay?
Counting of what's been going on, but when you talk about taking out drones and ballistic missiles, we have a capability to do things against that particular threat that we didn't have at the beginning of the war. And I think he just wanted to make that, make that, stated, make it very clear. I think he could have gone further. I think he could have been a little bit more detailed than that, but they kept the speech on a certain level. And I don't think you want to get bogged down in the details.
You know, Benham, there has been a question about the strikes last year on Fordow, Isfahan, and Natanz. This was the B-2 strikes that hit a number of nuclear targets within Iran last June.
President Trump said that they're monitoring these areas with satellites. I've had a question for a long time, and a lot of people have been wondering if this would be a reason to go boots on the ground to make sure that any nuclear residue, if you will, that might be left over from those strikes could still be used for something nefarious. President Trump saying that they're using satellites in order to watch what they're doing at those areas. Was that new information?
Not necessarily new information, because that was basically the posture of the U.S. military post-12-day war and post-Operation Midnight Hammer. But it is new in terms of the politics of the war, meaning I have long believed, and I'm trying to put pen to paper to this effect now, that militarily there's three pathways to victory. There's number one, which is exactly what Hal footstomped, which is what the president footstomped, which is the defanging mission against the long-range strike capabilities. That is well underway, and that is probably where the president will claim victory, quote unquote, on points. Number two is to really foot stomp the military win for Midnight Hammer, which is to either re-bomb some of those nuclear facilities that were bombed last time to further entrench and entomb the fissile material and other materials that were there, or to send in a team of special operations and ferry them out. This now, based on the options the president has been given, and just a few hours ago, it was reported that the president had been given a special operations mission, and he had reviewed it. No comment if he had approved it or denied it, but it seems like based on the speech today that he was not going to be going in that direction. But who knows, this could be low probability, high impact misdirection. But it seemed like that the president was going to instead keep a large amount of overhead satellites and intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance assets to make sure that the Iranians don't go near or don't fiddle with or don't extract from the three nuclear sites that were bombed last year, Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. And also on the third one, a third military pathway to victory, I know you didn't ask this, but also in terms of something that is slightly more surprising given the shift in the discourse from politics and security to energy and economics, the president really putting the burden more so and really kind of linking his statements over the past 72 hours to America's transatlantic friends and other European partners about the imperative for them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The one issue, one area in the speech I would take issue with is that the Strait itself will open up, quote unquote, magically. It is correct that the Iranians physically haven't impeded the Strait. There's about 10 to 12 mines. There's been drone strikes. There's been missile strikes. But ultimately here, we don't want the Iranians to end up retaining the kind of control that they exert now, where basically they have a toll booth set up where they're getting a multi-tiered entrance system. Because if many of these countries, which don't have powerful navies, are trying to get commodities in and out of the Persian Gulf or through the Strait of Hormuz, they might find it cheaper and easier to negotiate with Iran bilaterally, and then Iran will have them over a barrel. So that's really the one area of the speech that I would take issue with, because the U.S. has been focusing on the straits, on the energy, on the economics, on the market side of this conflict, and to leave the Islamic Republic in control of the Strait as well as in possession to really threaten the Strait and to regulate commerce in the Strait, that I think is in and of itself dangerous. So I'm not shocked about the U.S. posture related to nuclear because we've had the ISR there. We'll probably keep it there, if not probably double down, perhaps even give an ultimatum to the Iranians that if they go towards these sites, there could be another strike. There was a story in Reuters today that said that the president might adopt an occasional, not only use the word mowing of the lawn, but an occasional return to re-hit if the Iranians do go towards these nuclear facilities. But the shocking thing was number three, given the president's own interest in energy and economics and the ability of the Iranians thus far to flip the script on U.S. partners that are dependent on Persian Gulf oil and really charge them a fee to enter what is an international waterway.
Welcome to Wix Harmony. Take the speed of AI and pixel-level control to go from words into a full website that's entirely yours to shape. Need a new page, section, or a restyle? Ask Aria, your personal AI agent. And boom, there it is. Flow naturally between generating and doing it yourself. This is the new way to create. Wix Harmony.
Hello? Anyone out there? There's been a kidnapping.
What are we gonna do? Wait, keep going.
Thanks to the progress we've made, the president said, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly. Al, in military terms, what does shortly likely mean?
Well, shortly probably means weeks, not months. And I think 2 to 3 weeks is what I heard before the speech. It wasn't quite clear from the speech if he was going to stick hard to that. But it was basically what he was saying, hey, look, this is the objectives we set out. This is what we've accomplished. I think he laid out that pretty well. I think the one thing that kind of left open, and Benham kind of hit on that, was the Strait of Hormuz. And he basically saying, hey, we're going to pull out, but it's not. In so many words, it was kind of getting around to it's not our strait. And part of that is a simple reality. We don't know how well mined the strait is, how well the Iranians have used midget subs and other means to mine that strait. We do know that they are they're basically rerouting ships to go up near Hormuz Island, away from the international sea lanes. It's kind of that toll booth, if you will, that $2 million toll booth to charge some passageways. I can't imagine that we really want to leave that in place. I can't imagine that the other Gulf states are going to be satisfied with that. So I really do think if this might be a preparation, and President Trump is kind of famous for using strategic misdirection, if you will. He'll come out and say this stuff and you go, oh, okay, I guess we're not going to do something. And then the next morning you wake up and we did some huge strike somewhere, whether it's a strike or a raid or something like that. So this may be a speech that he's giving, kind of recounting why we're there and what we're doing in preparation for putting boots on the ground. But the boots would be a raid. And I really do think that we're looking hard at these islands in the Strait of Hormuz. And if we control the islands, then we essentially control the Strait of Hormuz. But I think the reason he keeps saying we're going to pull out is just a simple recounting of reality. We don't have a lot of minesweeping capabilities. Minesweeping is a painstaking, difficult, not a particularly glamorous thing. And since the end of the Cold War, that's just not an area. Minesweepers just do not get the attention they deserve. I could get into how we put a lot of money into littoral combat ships, thinking they were going to pick up that mission, and that never quite worked out. But who has minesweeping capability? Our NATO allies have quite a few minesweepers, very capable. They could go in there and do that. Japan has quite a few minesweepers, and South Korea has a few minesweepers. And so I think when he's saying pull out, he's really, he doesn't say minesweepers, but I can tell you strategically, he's thinking about that. He's thinking about the escorts and everything else that's going to go in there and clear out those sea lanes in order for them to do that. So I think part of this is he may be giving a speech in preparation for potentially putting boots on the ground, if nothing else temporarily, but maybe to seize those islands. I also want to point out something today is the UAE was making some statements to kind of indicate that they may be wanting to get more involved. And when they get more involved for them, might be retaking those 3 islands that they claim as sovereign territory, Abu Musa, Greater Lesser Tomb. I think they're looking at that, and I could see a combined action between the U.S., UAE, and potentially even Saudi Arabia, where we might look at doing some things in there. And I don't see us staying in there when he says he wants to withdraw, but I could see us going in there, doing the assault portion, take it, and then hand it over to another country like Saudi Arabia.
Hang on. Somebody's actually talking about Hezbollah for a change.
So multiple reports this morning, multiple sources, we should say, are reporting this morning that Iran-linked tankers have passed through the Strait of Hormuz this morning. Of course, that's despite the U.S. blockade now being in place. We're in day 2 now. 2 of them, according to multiple sources on this, visited Iranian ports, one of them allegedly a China-flagged tanker. So the reporting, though, is also suggesting it's possible that these ships are broadcasting false position reports known as spoofing. Darren, you may know something about that. But is it possible, I guess my question is, to shut down an entire waterway and absolutely nothing, gets through?
Well, it's possible. The question is, do you have the resources in place to actually make that kind of thing happen? It's not as easy as people think. And there also, I think there are a lot of people who think that we're sitting with a line of ships directly in the Strait of Hormuz rather than having them spread out throughout a region to include down into the Arabian Sea and elsewhere. So I'm not surprised that a couple might have gotten through in some way, but that doesn't mean they're in the free and clear. There are other lines as part of this blockade that could pick them up on the way. And we've seen this in this conflict before. We have traced ships all the way through into different segments of the oceans and captured them as well. So I wouldn't say that if something passed the strait itself, that it's clear all the way to its destination at this point either.
Good point. Dr. Rabil, one of those ships, as I mentioned, that allegedly passed this morning was a Chinese-flagged vessel. We talked about this yesterday.
Of course, a Chinese vessel.
What happens if and when China challenges us on a transit through the strait?
They're not going to challenge us unless we challenge them.
Well, it's a very difficult situation then you will have, and I don't think China will challenge us. I think that if the United States allowed the Chinese ship to pass, because really the president most likely would like to speak with the president of China, because you still have...
Look, man, you know, the truth of the matter is we need for China to push Iran to be more reasonable. So I would not be surprised if we did more to try and instigate that. You know what I mean?
Something. Oil, I don't know. This is probably they will pass. Probably United States will give them a pass. But also United States is going to make sure that China will not transfer there any weapons. So I think if those ships, or if United States suspected that those ships have weapons, I think United States will immediately stop.
Yeah, the president was pretty clear on that. He was pressed on that detail yesterday. And China has floated and strongly urged peace in the region, too. Meanwhile, Pakistan is suggesting that we get back to the table and that we start a new round of talks. The president was very clear on that yesterday, saying when he was asked about it, that he doesn't care about getting back to the negotiating table. J.D. Vance, though, would not be expected to return in person if these talks were to resume. We're understanding they might be something called...
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame Trump for not giving a damn about getting back to negotiating with... We're not going to get anywhere. That's just the truth of the matter. You know, both sides, us and them, we both want like a no conditions type agreement. And both sides laugh at the other side's request. So what's the point in negotiating in those sorts of constraints? I mean, nobody's willing to budge. You know, I mean, I say we just blow Iran off the map and be done with it. Let's get back to work.
Members that then may be tasked with negotiating a potential normalization of relations between Israel and Lebanon. But as things stand down...
Israel and Lebanon to talk in America, huh?
They'd asked for a ceasefire even before, you know, heading to Washington to engage in these talks. Obviously, that wasn't, that hasn't gone into effect at all. The fact that expectations are low, this is all a shaky ceasefire between the US and Iran is kind of very much linked to this. How much pressure can we imagine the United States is likely to put on both Israel and Lebanon, because this could ultimately derail those talks between the US and Iran.
It's not Lebanon. It's not Lebanon that we should be talking to. It's Hezbollah, and they won't talk to us. Besides, I don't think we really should be giving them any sort of pedestal whatsoever. Hezbollah is not a legitimate. They have no sovereignty. You know what I mean?
To an extent. We saw this most obviously on April the 8th when Israel has effectively launched a devastating attack against Lebanon at the very moment in which the ceasefire was announced with Iran, meaning that the two fronts are perceived as different between by the US and Israel, and then trying to separate these two fronts. But there's also a misalignment probably between the US and Israel in this respect. The US is certainly trying to put an end to the conflict with Iran, but it doesn't look like it's equally committed to the end of the conflict with Lebanon, meaning that some of the expectations for a positive outcome of these negotiations between Lebanon and Israel count on the fact that the US may put pressure on Israel.
According to Trump, Iran wants to make a deal now,
any
huh?
ships going to Iranian ports.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'm curious about this meeting.
Hang on. I'm bouncing around a bit.
Don't get overly concerned that we're going to be in there forever. You know, he campaigned on staying out of these wars.
Yeah, he sure
He's
did.
made it very clear he does not like these long wars that draw our resources away. So I think he was doing a pretty good job trying to convey that. But I do think he's keeping his options very much open. He's looking at the ground. And Benham mentioned some of the countries that definitely have are big stakeholders in the Gulf back open again. A number of them have significant capabilities to be very useful there. And by the way, pulling back our forces, I think he's kind of signaling to them. He's said it outright. I mean, it's not like he's quite hinting at it. He's told the Europeans, hey, get down here and provide support.
Yeah.
But he's making it very clear. He wants to pull U.S. forces out and have them come in. And there's a lot of things that they can do in that regard. I think of a number of countries in Asia that could step in, although
they won't.
I have to say, the idea that we're opening the door for China to get more involved in the Persian Gulf does leave me kind of wondering about the strategic direction that we're going there. I don't know that we want to open up another big waterway for more Chinese naval involvement.
I have so many questions. Benham, I'm going to throw you one more because President Trump has signaled that this is going to go on for weeks longer. And if there is no cooperation from the Iranian regime, we could still see escalations. Is it clear to us, what level of clarity do we have on the level of communication that U.S. officials and Iranian officials have had up to this point?
Not much.
Well, it seems to be indirect, if anything at all. There's been talk of this Pakistani mediation most recently.
Yeah, that's not going to.
Already mentioned a couple of days ago, he would like to have a DMZ, a demilitarized zone in the capital, and to have mainly Lebanese government sovereignty over the capital. So if he does that, as a matter of fact, it's going to be a good, way to go ahead and have more support from the United States and to have better chances of having really significant negotiation between Israel and Lebanon. I know Hezbollah is a big challenge. I agree with the colonel, that many Lebanese, they don't like to see Hezbollah merely a force in Lebanese politics. They would like the government to take control and impose its authorities throughout Lebanon. But I also understand very well. I served in the Red Cross in Lebanon for many years myself. And I know that Hezbollah is a force to be reckoned with. But I also know that the Lebanese government should take steps and it has to decide whether it has a sovereign country, and when I said on the media, a farm. So really, they have to take that steps. It's an uphill battle, and I hope they will take that steps to confront Hezbollah, especially beginning in West Beirut.
We'll be watching those talks set to begin this morning. We'll be carrying it here on N2 as soon as we get press opportunities. Dr. Robert Rabil, professor of Middle East Studies at Florida Atlantic University, geopolitical strategist, Colonel Darren Gobb. Good to see you both. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Other news today, Democrat and ardent Trump hater Eric Swalwell not only dropping out of the race for governor in the state of California, but now saying he will resign his House seat with a fellow House member, saying he could actually be heading to jail. We're covering that for you coming up, and the very latest on the blockade in the Strait of...
Generally, I like to point out that when someone of someone who's making a lot of waves in Washington, it's not uncommon to see a sexual harassment case or something of that nature pop up against them. It's almost convenient. However, a lot of the time you see those kind of fizzle out and nothing ever really come of it. Not in this case, and not in the case of most of the time when it's Democrats, if you catch my drift. It's a very strange correlation, if I do say so myself. I'll just leave it at that and let you speculate.
The dictator of that country.
We are just 15 minutes away from them opening bell. I don't know about you, but it seems like today's dragging already.
The state, nor society, nor the military capabilities of Iran and Venezuela is the same. So I would say, in short, we should not be looking for a DLC in Tehran. I think there's no way out but through here. And that it would behoove the president, who unfortunately did not mention today, the Iranian people, that Iran is home to the most pro-American and most pro-Israeli society in that part of the world. It would be a shame to miss that and just settle for musical chairs at the top. And so,
yeah, I mean, it's just the Islamic Republic that hates America. The Iranian people hate Islam. They just can't say so for fear of death.
Eve Online.
Nope, I don't think so. Eve Online with your fucking commercials. Bank. Aw. What? Iran update. This isn't new. Yeah, that's not new. We're not gonna keep that up. Let's listen in on this.
And we agreed to a lot of things, but they didn't agree to that. And I think they will agree to it. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. If they don't agree, there's no deal.
Has your timetable changed in any way in terms of ending this conflict?
No, we're just it's going on. Just right now, there's no fighting. Right now, we have a blockade. They're doing no business.
That's President Trump yesterday reiterating he will not come to an agreement with Tehran if it means they will obtain a nuclear weapon. The president told me over the weekend, as such, that the U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz will go into effect. It is in effect right now. Talks of future negotiations between the U.S. and Iran could be in the works. Meanwhile, Pakistan is reportedly offering to host a new round of talks this week, perhaps in Islamabad. The talks could reportedly resume as early as Thursday of this week. Meanwhile, Fox sources say that the past weekend negotiations fell apart after Tehran severely misjudged what leverage it thought it had. The Journal is reporting that the U.S. asked Iran to suspend nuclear enrichment for 20 years with a moratorium that could come with sanctions relief. Lebanon, meanwhile, is meeting with the U.S. and Israel today in Washington for talks to separate its ceasefire talks from the Iranian talks. Joining me now is Texas Congressman Ronnie Jackson, a member of the House Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committees. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. And what is your take on the status of this war at this moment?
Well, I think President Trump's doing everything he can to end this war as quickly as possible. The straits are critical. We cannot let the straits be the issue here. He has worked aggressively to come up with some type of negotiation that.
I'm just looking for something interesting.
I do believe they're going to come to the table on this because nobody can be so stupid as to say that we want to have nuclear weapons and they have no cards. They have no cards whatsoever.
So
it's not that they're stupid. It's that they're driven by prophecy. They believe with every fiber in their being that what they're doing is ordained by God. Like I guess that is stupid, but they are far from conceding that point.
So if they do not give up that effort, is that the plan? Will you further destruct Iran?
Yeah, I will. If they don't give that plan up, yeah. What we want to do is we'll open up the strait.
Sounded pretty sure of himself there.
President Trump telling me on Sunday that Iran still wants to make a deal, remaining confident that the U.S. and Tehran will come to an agreement. A second round of talks reportedly could happen as early as this Thursday, aiming to secure a deal and end this 6-week conflict. The current 2-week ceasefire that is in place expires on April 21st. This as President Trump implemented the naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz yesterday. It is underway as we speak. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for weighing in on all of this. And I know you've got a new op-ed in the New York Post this morning writing that Iran will try to string the U.S. along and sell us a bad deal. But businessman Trump will not let that happen.
Will.
Tell me more about your thing.
Absolutely, they will. In fact, when this ceasefire, when the 2-day ceasefire was announced, or whatever it was, I think it was 2 days. I said on my live stream that they're just going to use this time to lick their wounds and resupply everything that they need. And sure as hell, it's exactly what they did.
Thinking, and where do you expect this blockade in the Strait to be going?
Well, first of all, I think we're watching a complete reversal here by President Trump and his team. We saw the Iranians, when they seized the Straits of Hormuz, that enabled them to shut the war down and go to a ceasefire. And now we've seen President Trump move from kinetic warfare to economic warfare. And the way this thing is really working is phase one is the blockade itself. And, you know, for viewers to understand, we're not up having a blockade of ships where the Iranian ports are. If you're coming in and your intent is a tanker to pick up Iranian oil and you come into the Arabian Sea further down in the south, that's likely where we contact you and we tell you to park your ship in the Gulf of Oman in a certain place. If you don't do that, then we're going to board your ship and make certain it's parked in that place. If you're coming from an Iranian port in the north and you're heading down towards the Straits of Hormuz, again, we're going to call you on the radio and tell you if you're transporting Iranian oil to stop and turn around. If you're transporting everything else but Iranian oil, you're free to pass. If you continue to come to the Straits of Hormuz, we'll likely let you get through there, and when you get into the Gulf of Oman, we will board your ship and tell you where to park it. That is how the blockade is working. Phase two is the non-Iranian ships that are moving. How many of them are actually moving, or are they still feel intimidated and coerced by Iran and they don't feel like they have freedom of navigation yet? That is the test case. Phase two, if that's the case, which I suspect it will be, then we implement the next mission, and President Trump has told Admiral Cooper, the CENTCOM commander, be prepared to do that, and that is clear the Straits of Hormuz, make sure it's clear of mines, open up other channels. We saw some of that going on this weekend. Next thing is secure it and provide escorts for the ships that come through it. And we would do that initially and then eventually transfer that to allies and partners to take that over from us. All of that would obviously take some time. If there's not a deal, that may be the only way to remove the intimidation and coercion that likely Iran still has on the owners of those merchant vessels who do not want to send their ships down there, given the threat that Iran may indeed fire at them. It remains to be seen if we have to do that or not. But the fact that we're prepared to do that is a signal of how committed we are to, one, stop Iran, take Iran's control of the Straits away from them. And by control, I mean it's not just removing the toll, it's removing who they designate that can pass through the Straits. That is control, and that has got to go away completely, and that is the intent here. Phase one, hopefully that achieves it. Phase two, we'll go into the more aggressive program to achieve that end state. Possibly the negotiations, because that's on the table, Maria, as one of the provisions in that. They have to give up control of the Straits of Hormuz for sure, or there's not going to be a deal.
Do you worry that Iran is going to hit back by saying, well, then we're going to go dominate another choke point, we're going to go to the other vessel waterway that the Saudis rely on so much in the Red Sea? I mean, could they use the Houthis to do that?
Well, they could, but look at the Houthis haven't done much of anything. And obviously the Iranians thought the Houthis would be there to help them. Hezbollah certainly has tried. Hamas cannot.
Yeah.
And the militias in Iraq and Syria, particularly the one in Iraq, has provided support as well.
And what?
Listen, the Houthis, although they receive all the support, Maria, from Iran, they've always maintained a little bit of independence from them. And they're displaying that right now. The Houthis know this. If they get involved in this, we are going to pound them and pound them, and they know for a fact they will lose in that. They will give up great capability, and that is what is holding them back.
That's good info. Thank you for that. What about Russia? Russia says it's ready to take in Iran's enriched uranium as part of a future peace deal with the United States. Now we're supposed to trust Russia on this. And Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov is going to China. He arrived in China for a high-stakes official visit today, General. So what's going on here on the sidelines with Russia and China?
Yeah, certainly we're clear right about this. The administration is. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are all partners, and they collaborate, and they've been helping each other. They were all in trying to help Russia in Ukraine. And certainly they're doing the same thing with Iran. I mean, China is pretty much their financier, buying 80–90% of their oil that does come out of there, and Russia provides support for them as well. It's no surprise that Russia would do anything to assist the Iranians here.
Yeah.
And guess what? We can't trust Iran and we can't trust Russia. So no, we're not going to give enriched uranium to Russia.
Yeah.
What's going to happen here is we're going to take it away from Iran ourselves and make sure it indeed is all gone and Iran is not in possession of it. And we're not going to let them enrich any uranium whatsoever.
That's good. I hope he's right. Because, yeah, sorry, getting a phone call. We are 3 minutes outside of the opening bell. I am going to go over to either Schwab or Bloomberg. Let's check out Schwab.
Well, so it feels like we're going back almost to this pre-war playbook, Nicole. I mean, if you take a look at the Asian session overnight, you had a nice rally, particularly in Taiwan. In fact, the TAIEX hit a record overnight thanks to heavyweight.
All right, we're going to go over to Bloomberg.
The government was not able to fund itself, or people were not able to feed themselves. And I think we've just got to get back to that. I think...
Okay, apparently not. Schwab it is.
Growth have come in over the last 10 minutes or so, and a little bit weaker, coming down a bit, 2.3% versus the 2.4% forecast prior. Yeah. Also for euro growth. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talking about the agenda for G20, and it's going to be all about growth and the global imbalances and the risks that go with that, and with a focus on China in particular. You are looking at NVIDIA with some news.
Right, yeah, so it's come out and denied this report that we learned about yesterday. This was according to Semi-Accurate. According to their website, NVIDIA had been in negotiations for over a year to buy a large company, they say, that will reshape the PC landscape, and they've been following this story, they say, since late 2024, and the time is approaching to make a deal or walk, they say. Subsequently, we did see shares of some of these PC makers like Dell, HP, on some of the speculation that these could be some of the names that are involved here, rallying yesterday, but then NVIDIA coming out and denying that report from that website, saying that the media report is false. NVIDIA is not engaged in discussions to acquire any PC maker. So obviously that's something to look at, and they have sort of nipped that in the bud now, but we did subsequently, as I say, see a nice pop in some of those companies. Across the tech landscape, though, I mentioned this yesterday, Nicole, you and I were discussing it. Keep an eye on Intel today. 9-day winning streak. The last time we saw that was back in 2023. 13-day winning streak would take us back to 2005. So let's see if we can make it 10 today.
Right, here we go.
It could certainly be looking at potentially another sort of record winning streak here, as far as, you know, taking us back to the early 2000s. So keep an eye on that.
Exciting, right? 5-year highs there. Citi, 18-year
There it
looking
is.
good. Sam Bottas, thank you. Folks, it is time now for the opening bell. And here we go. We're looking at the stock market with some up arrows this morning. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is at 48,234, gaining 16 points right now, so fractionally higher. 69 69.06 on the S&P. I love seeing the 69 handle, right? You haven't seen that in a while. And by the way, yesterday when I was taking a look, do you know we are now positive for the year, right? Year to date, the S&P is now positive by nearly 1%. Looking at the Dow Jones Industrial Average, now you got me wondering. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is positive by 0.4%. And the tech-heavy NASDAQ, which is up right now 0.5% at 25,531, year to date is up 1.1%. Right? Just when it was all doom and gloom, people are feeling a little better. Year to date, the Russell, the small caps, if you were in that, you are so happy. 1 year up 46%. I almost can't even believe my eyes. Year to date up 8%. Okay, that's where we start here as far as sectors. There's plenty of green here. Some of the leaders include tech and communication services, and also consumer discretionary. Let's continue to take a look at some of the story stocks, important names to watch. Diane King Hall is here. We just had our opening bell, and the Dow is up 12 points here, Diane. You're looking at Oracle power deal with Bloom Energy.
Yeah.
That's another big one.
Yeah, this powerful rally continues for Oracle. Bloom Energy also rallying big this morning off the back
Oracle's
of an
right here.
extension of their partnership. So Oracle
Nice
and
big
Bloom
jump.
Energy announcing an expanded partnership where Bloom Energy will
That's pretty
support
damn
the
good.
rapid build out of AI infrastructure and cloud computing as well. Oracle looking to procure up to 2.8 gigawatts of Bloom fuel cell systems under the deal. Now, previously, the first 1.2 gigawatts was already contracted and is already being deployed now through next year. So why does this matter? AI data centers, we know, use enormous amounts of power. So traditional electric grids can be slow to expand or just
Palantir's got a
already
little bit of a jump.
overloaded. So this fuels the next generation.
NVIDIA,
Bloom
as
fuel
usual.
cell offer on-site electricity generation, faster deployment than waiting for the grid,
Look at that.
reliable backup power, better support for
Look
the
at NVIDIA
nonstop
running.
AI workloads. We know AI is just often nonstop. Oracle's doing this because they've been aggressively building out their cloud and AI business. So a big surge, adding to the advance that we saw in shares of Oracle yesterday. Shares of Oracle gained almost 13% yesterday. Today, adding another 6%, nearly 7%. Bloom Energy up 14% right now off the back of this, Nicole.
Oh, yeah, and at a new high. Bloom Energy, the high 208.97 has pulled back a little bit, but you noted the 14% gain. I just pulled up a 3-year chart, but definitely a new high, at least multi-year high. Let's take a look at CarMax.
Yeah, CarMax, this one's a tough one because it actually did do better than expected, but there's not a lot of grace being shown to CarMax because, listen, profit and sales were still down on a year-over-year basis, so the stock is slumping 13%. Investors are just asking the question, what have you done for me lately? And it's clearly not enough from the viewpoint of investors. Adjusted earnings per share came in at 34 cents. That was better than expected. She was looking for 21 cents. Revenue coming in at $5.95 billion, also better than expected. But again, that's down on a year-over-year basis. Revenue down 1% year-over-year. Investors
Busted
are
through that
focused on
75.
slowing fundamentals here. Sales are still soft. Retail unit sales fell 0.8%. Comparable store used unit sales declining nearly 2%, off 1.9%. You see that decline in gross profit off by more than 9%. CarMax seems to be using lower prices to stir up demand here. It's good for customers, but it's tough for margins there. Their wholesale business was mixed. Wholesale unit volume rose 3%. That is a positive sign. The street is not paying attention to that overall because you also want to keep in mind average wholesale prices actually dropped about $270. So that pressures revenue. Gross profit per wholesale unit also fell. More cars sold on both the wholesale side and the retail side, but at lower profitability. So it just highlights this ongoing reset they're having. They have this new CEO, Keith Barr, who took over in March. He says execution and efficiency are top priorities, but from the viewpoint of investors, not executing well enough, clearly. And you recall that Starboard had recently disclosed a stake, so there's some activist investor activity around this one, Nicole.
So they did cut prices to bring the customers back, but this new CEO, they said, that you just mentioned, has some work to do.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, all right, down 14.25% now. How about last but not least, we look at J&J.
Yeah, J&J. We'll continue to watch the investor reaction because they did do better than expected. Shares a little soft this morning, off by 0.5%, but look, it's been an outperformer year to date. That stock up double digits, outperforming the S&P 500 so far this year. We've talked to many analysts who've called for healthcare to be an outperformer. They top first quarter expectations, adjusted EPS coming in at $2.70, revenue coming in at a touch above $24 billion. So both the top and bottom line better than expected. They also raised their full year outlook. They had strength in the cancer drug Darzalex and its psoriasis treatment. They had strength there. That helped offset a sharp drop in Stelara. That fell about 60% because it lost patent protection. So there have been some worries about, okay, once that patent cliff hits, what is the rest of the pipeline look like? So they did actually offset it. They did do better than expected. They also had solid growth in their med tech unit, medical technology unit. Again, so there was some general strength that helped offset that Stelara patent cliff. It's still a watch item for investors here. Not enough to cause serious damage to shares. Look, we're seeing shares almost recover in real time right now, Nicole.
Yeah, raising the quarterly dividend. Two people like that. Yeah, you just said it. Recover in real time, and there it is. Now we're up 0.5%.
Yeah.
Diane King Hall making news. Thank you so much, Diane. Okay, coming up, folks, we'll take a look at some of the technical trends here on Wall Street. Stocks to watch. What things could be poised for a...
Okay, we'll go over to Bloomberg.
There is some concern that inflationary pressures may not be as short-lived as we think. And if you look at just some of the underlying dynamics of what was driving the latest CPI number, there were some disinflationary things around things like used vehicles that probably are going to roll off. So I think we're in this window that for the next few months, the Fed's going to be on hold because the inflationary pressures will feel a little bit more immediate. But we still hold true to our call that by the end of the year, the Fed is cutting again.
I guess, Lori, and that makes sense. And you do see two-year yields remain elevated because of that concern. But that gets to this odd cross-asset picture where, as we've been talking, stocks are back at the levels they were before this conflict. You look at what oil has done before the conflict. It was hovering in the mid-60s. Now it's in the high 90s. And two-year yields, they were about 3.4%, are now near 3.8%. Does it make sense, even if you expect some things to dissipate, that you have yields in oil still under pressure while stocks show none of it?
I think there are a couple of things that are happening here. First of all, and you've talked about this at the top of the program, is that earnings are actually looking pretty good. So if you actually look at the re-rating that we had when markets pulled back earlier this year at the start of the conflict, coupled with actually improvement in earnings outlooks, you've actually seen stocks look relatively attractive. And then when you layer in some of the other themes around artificial intelligence and other ways that productivity gains can happen, that paints a relatively good picture. But as you also note, this conflict's far from over. And so there is still risk that we have another shoe to drop, if you will, and that the energy constraints become a real problem globally, not just here in the U.S.
You know, we talk so much about the broadening out, Lori, but I'm looking at the index here since February 27th and seeing that even though we're up, we only have 175 stocks that have gained in that time, and the rest are down. Obviously, energy has been a big beneficiary of this war, and the AI trade is something that benefits the economy greatly, but not necessarily all of the people in it. What do you think about the idea that we're still seeing a broadening out trend in terms of earnings growth?
So we are fans of that broadening out trend, and we do think if you look at just the gyrations of market, it has been a little bit hard to parse that out. But if you look at some of the underlying factors, things like quality have done better. You know, value year to date, even though it's had a little bit of a lag in the last week or so when we had the sharp rally again, value stocks have done a little better. Now, that doesn't mean that the tide lifts all the boats, but I think that there is this kind of growing broader input, whether it's, an economic recovery that we thought was going to have more legs, but now is threatened by the Iran conflict. But that kind of broader sentiment, we think, is something that investors should still focus on for the longer term.
Hey, Lori, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much for joining us, State Street Global Investment Officer Lori Heinel. Let's get a check on your equity market about 10 minutes into your trading day. And we are looking at gains 0.4%. We are less than 1.5% away from all-time highs. A remarkable turnaround for this market, as we've been discussing, that is now back up.
I do believe we should enjoy it while it lasts, because gas is probably going to be going up. Oil's probably going to be going up. This is all just temporary, in my opinion, because, I mean, we're technically under a ceasefire, right, with Iran, and that ceasefire is only to last for a total of, 15 days, and when that expires, I just don't think that we're going to have much of a resolution. I'm not optimistic about it at all. So, that being said, I would expect a lot of reversals from the positions we're seeing today. We're watching Bitcoin go up. We're watching oil come down. We're watching the dollar come down. We're watching silver and gold making slow climbs up. All of this, I do believe we will see a reversal, like complete reversal of everything. I believe we'll watch Bitcoin either stagger or come down. We'll watch oil run up, which will strengthen the dollar, which will turn silver and gold down. So enjoy these gains while they last. Unless something remarkable happens between us and Iran, that's my prediction at least. I could be wrong. I often am here lately. Hence why I lost $70,000 and I am technically homeless. I'm not going to be continuing these live streams for very much longer. I don't know how much time I've got left. I feel like I've been taking advantage of the kindness of who I've been staying with. You know, through no fault of their own, I am cramping their space, and I'm going to have to move on even if I don't have anywhere to go, which means I'm going to end up sleeping in my car. So that's just the reality of it. I'm pretty much just waiting on the hammer to drop on me. I don't have many options. I've got so much money tied up in limbo and I can't touch, like 4 different directions. I've got so many things, so many avenues of money tied up in directions I can't touch, like literally can't touch. I've got plenty of crypto tied up. I can't touch that for several months. That's in about 3 different directions. And then, of course, I am currently disabled and waiting on my disability hearing. I'm at the last phase of all that, waiting on the hearing. And waiting on the hearing began in the middle of December, so I'm 4 months into that. So, as far as I'm concerned, that could be any day, but then it could drag on for another year. I just don't know. And on top of all that, I've got my tax refund I've been waiting on, which they just recently told me might be waiting even longer on. It's been 11 weeks since I filed. They said it would take 3. I spoke to them yesterday, and they were apologetic, said it was all their fault, and said that the last time they did something in their computer was March the 8th, and from that date, they said 4 to 8 weeks, and I'd have my money. Well, it's been almost 5 weeks. But will who I'm staying with grant me another 3 weeks if it comes to that? I doubt it. You know, I initially, when I started staying here, was under the guise of it being 2 or 3 weeks. It's now been almost 3 months. Yeah, a little over 2 months, actually. Still, it's longer than I said, and I hate not doing what I say I'm going to do. I am a man of my word. But that being said, I will probably be sleeping in my car here the next, I don't know how long, whenever she decides to tell me to go. She's an old friend of mine, so I hope she doesn't. But like I said, the agreement wasn't for me to be here this long. So I would not blame her one bit. I've been exploring plenty of options and just nothing has turned up in my favor lately. So that's about the size of it. I will likely be sleeping in my car. But anyway, I appreciate everybody watching. I will probably be back on tomorrow morning again, as per usual, but eventually this will come to an end. Until I get into another place, which I just don't know. I do not know. And I've got a cat too, which makes it, I can't even go to a homeless shelter. So most of them won't allow cats. But anyway. Yeah. Appreciate everybody being here. Love you in the mouth. Peace, love, and hair grease. Be good to each other, okay? Take care.